Chapter 2378. What a strong sword aura! The crowd looked up into the sky and felt the terrifying sword aura. They were all shocked. Bai Fengming's sword aura was like a mountain, boundless and heavy. Nie Tian's sword aura was like a towering tree that was expanding crazily, as if there was no limit. Many swordsmen fixed their eyes on Nie Tian and gasped inwardly. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. They couldn't imagine how an intermediate swordsman could release such a terrifying sword aura. Bai Fengming was also shocked at this moment. Nie Tian's sword aura was so strong that it was beyond his expectation. The reason why he chose to compete with Nie Tian was because he was afraid of Nie Tian's strength. He had never fought with Nie Tian, but he often fought with Yuan Lai. Although his strength was above Yuan Lai's, it wasn't easy for him to win every time. Therefore, when he heard that Nie Tian defeated Yuan Lai with one move, he was afraid of Nie Tian. But now, it seemed that his decision to compete with Nie Tian in sword aura wasn't very wise. Feeling that Nie Tian's sword aura was still expanding, Bai Fengming couldn't bear it anymore. He roared and instantly stabbed out with his sword. Boom! The sword aura condensed into a sword shadow and attacked Nie Tian. Bai Fengming's sudden attack caused everyone to be stunned for a moment. When two swordsmen competed with sword aura, fairness was the most important thing. Under normal circumstances, the two swordsmen would wait until their sword auras were at their peak before their sword auras collided. Although it wasn't against the rules for Bai Fengming to attack first, it was inevitable that people would look down on him. However, Nie Tian didn't seem to mind at all. His lips curled into a faint smile as he stabbed out with his astral heaven slash. The celestial demon's sword intent instantly erupted forth as a brilliant sword light blossomed, illuminating the space within a radius of tens of thousands of meters. The eyes of the crowd suddenly trembled, and they were burning with passion. Their nerves were stretched to the extreme, looking forward to the moment when the two sword shadows collided. Boom! Under the watchful eyes of countless people, the two sword shadows collided with a loud bang. At the same time and space seemed to stop for a moment. Bang! But in the next instant, one of the sword images was unable to withstand the impact and directly collapsed, transforming into sword intent that surged out. Not good. Bai Fengming suddenly felt the sword shadow charging at him. His pupils trembled, and he cried out in fear. He retreated hastily, barely dodging the sword shadow's attack. However, he was still affected by the residual power of the sword shadow, and several bloody wounds appeared on his body. He was in a very sorry state. Impossible! Bai Fengming steadied his body. His face was gloomy and murderous as he roared. His sword intent lasted less than a second before it was directly shattered by the impact of Nie Tian's sword intent. From his point of view, this was simply impossible. He was a swordsman at the peak of the integration of sword and martial arts, and he had the Phoenix Cry sword seal in his body. His sword intent was stronger than that of swordsmen of the same level. Nie Tian was only at the intermediate level of the integration of sword and martial art. How could his sword intent be stronger than his? Why? Bai Fengming roared in his heart. His eyes were bloodshot, and he looked like a wild beast that was about to go berserk. The eyes of the crowd were dull at this moment, and they all locked onto Nie Tian. There was shock, horror, fear, and indescribable admiration. The strength of Nie Tian's sword intent was beyond imagination, and it shocked everyone to the extreme. The spiritualist was dumbfounded at this moment, and his eyes were filled with infatuation. It was only then that he realized how wise his decision to cooperate with Nie Tian was. Bai Fengming, you've lost. At this moment, high up in the sky, Nie Tian smiled faintly and said in a loud voice. When Bai Fengming heard Nie Tian's words, he was shocked and his eyes trembled. He suddenly lifted his head and looked at Nie Tian with a murderous gaze. Huh! Nie Tian could feel the murderous intent in Bai Fengming's eyes, and he could not help but narrow his eyes. I haven't lost. I'm going to kill you. In the next moment, Bai Fengming suddenly roared, and the sword intent in his body surged out like raging wave. His body moved abruptly, and he stabbed his sword straight at Nie Tian. Bai Fengming was the only swordsman among the 9 demons, and he was proud of his sword intent. However, at this moment, he had been defeated by Nie Tian. This was unacceptable to him, and he was close to losing his mind. He, Bai Fengming, could not lose. He could not afford to lose. Watch out! When the crowd saw Bai Fengming's sudden attack, they all exclaimed. No one had expected that Bai Fengming would attack again after losing. Facing Bai Fengming's crazy sword, Nie Tian's eyes turned cold, and the corner of his mouth twitched coldly. You're courting death. Human sword cutting stars. Then, without any hesitation, the sword intent in his body surged, and he directly used the sacred heaven-defying sword. Boom! The godfiend's sword intent combined with the human sword cutting stars, and a mighty sword shadow rolled out like a wild dragon. Boom! In the next moment, the 2 sword shadows collided head-on, and a vast and boundless aura suddenly surged out. The surrounding space trembled, and the terrifying sword intent wreaked havoc in the space. Bang! Then, in the blink of an eye, one of the sword shadows collapsed, and a terrifying wave of sword intent instantly pressed down on Bai Fengming. Bai Fengming was shocked when he felt the overwhelming sword intent surging towards him. His eyes trembled, and as if he had just woken up from a dream, he screamed in horror. However, it was too late. It was impossible for him to escape unscathed. At the moment of life and death, Bai Fengming was still calm. He forcefully stabbed out with his sword, and at the same time, he retreated rapidly. However, his figure was still engulfed by the sword intent. QL 11-inch this. The crowd was shocked by the scene in the sky, and their eyes trembled violently. Bai Fengming was engulfed by the wave of sword intent. Nie Tian stood in the sky, looking at the scene in front of him coldly. He originally didn't want to argue with Bai Fengming, but the latter insisted on attacking him, and he was forced to do so. In fact, Bai Fengming wasn't weak, but he lost control of his state just now, and didn't use the sword intent to its fullest. After a long time, the sword intent in the sky dissipated, and a figure gradually became clear. It was Bai Fengming. However, at this moment, Bai Fengming was covered in blood, and his breathing was very weak. He was just barely standing. After a clash of swords, he was defeated again, and was seriously injured by Nie Tian. Everyone's expression was completely stiff like a wooden statue. One sword, just one sword, and Nie Tian directly injured Bai Fengming. The 9 demons of the Dark Ocean Dark Prison seemed to be trash in front of Nie Tian. Nie Tian glanced at Bai Fengming and didn't say much. He just sneered and was about to turn around and leave. Huh! However, at this moment, Nie Tian was surprised, and his expression changed. In an instant, he suddenly felt that he was locked on by an extremely strong killing intent. The killing intent was extremely terrifying. It was like a giant invisible hand that grabbed him tightly. Nie Tian abruptly raised his head and looked into the distant sky. A black-robed figure was looking at him coldly. Killing intent. Nie Tian's heart sank. He immediately confirmed that the killing intent around him came from the black-robed figure's eyes. The black-robed figure's eyes were like 2 abysses of killing intent, and they radiated with boundless killing intent. At the same time, Lai Yen Jiufeng's expression changed, and his gaze locked onto the black-robed figure. Supreme Killing Demon Eyes. Lai Yen Jiufeng looked at the black-robed man, and his eyes shook. He couldn't believe that the black-robed man's eyes were the Supreme Killing Demon Eyes. Chapter 2379. Extreme Killing Demon Eyes. It really is the Extreme Killing Demon Eyes. Lai Yen Jiufeng looked at the black-robed man and cried out in joy. His eyes shone with boundless excitement. He had never imagined that the black-robed man's eyes were the extreme killing demon eyes. The extreme killing demon eyes were the eyes of the heaven-punishing demon heart-killing physique, 7 kills. He is 7 kills. Li Yin Jiufeng's eyes trembled and his heart shook. He almost shouted. If this black-robed man had the extreme killing demon eyes, then he was very likely 7 kills. But in the next moment, Li Yin Jiufeng's expression changed. His eyes were very complicated and puzzled. He looked at the black-robed man hesitantly. He was very sure that the black-robed man's eyes were the extreme killing demon eyes. But the black-robed man's aura puzzled him. The black-robed man did not have the meridians of 3 life, and other than his eyes, his killing intent was not very strong. Li Yin Jiufeng knew that if it was a killing physique, its killing intent would be very strong besides the extreme killing eyes. But this black-robed man's killing intent was not that strong. He is not 7 kills. Li Yin Jiufeng's pupils shrank. Killing intent actually appeared in his eyes. In an instant, he understood what was going on. This black-robed man only had the extreme killing demon eyes, but he was definitely not 7 kills. If he was not 7 kills, then why would he have the extreme killing demon eyes? He took his eyes from 7 kills. Li Yin Jiufeng's heart felt cold. His entire body trembled slightly. This black-robed man's eyes were not his own. He had taken them from 7 kills. Li Yin Jiufeng's eyes burned with fury when he realized this. He seemed to boil. This black-robed man had taken 7 kills' eyes. How could Li Yin Jiufeng endure this? Your Highness, are you all right? Nangong Ling saw that Li Yin Jiufeng's expression was not right and couldn't help but ask. He noticed that Li Yin Jiufeng's gaze had been fixed on the black-robed man. He frowned and said, "That guy's killing intent is very strong." Li Yin Jiufeng's face was so dark that it looked like it was dripping blood. He forced himself not to act recklessly. He knew that if it was the real 7 kills, his killing intent would be several times thicker than this black-robed man's. Since the man in black had stolen Qi Sha's eye, he must know where Qi Sha was. At this moment, the man in black stood in the air, his cold eyes locked onto Nie Tian. Nie Tian was also looking at the black-clothed man in shock. The killing intent in this person's eyes is very heavy. Just who is he? Nie Tian frowned and thought to himself. He was tens of thousands of meters away from the black-clothed man, but the other party's killing intent was like a solid substance, enveloping him. Under the shroud of this murderous aura, Nie Tian even felt a real sense of suffocation. He had seen many cruel and bloodthirsty martial artists, but none of them had a killing intent that could compare to the black-clothed man. Could he be? Not far behind Nie Tian, the spiritualist's voice rang. Although it wasn't loud, Nie Tian heard it clearly. Nie Tian turned to look at the spiritualist, and the latter actually had a shocked expression on his face. "City Lord, who is that black-clothed man?" Nie Tian's eyes focused, and he couldn't help but ask. The spiritualist's figure slowly moved closer to Nie Tian. He seemed very nervous. He could already see that the black-clothed man was looking at Nie Tian. He seemed to be very afraid that the black-clothed man would suddenly attack Nie Tian. If I's guess is correct, this person should be the son of the Dark Emperor, Li Juhun. The spiritualist replied solemnly, his eyes trembling slightly. Li Juhun. Nie Tian's eyes focused, and his heart inexplicably trembled. The spiritualist's guess was correct. This black-clothed man was indeed the son of the Dark Emperor, Li Juhun. Li Juhun was very famous in the Dark Sea prison, even more so than most of the city lords. In the entire Dark Sea prison, he was second only to the Dark Emperor. Among the 9 demons of the Dark Sea, Li Juhun ranked first. However, there weren't many people who had actually seen Li Juhun. Therefore, at this moment, everyone looked at Li Juhun in shock. They didn't know the latter's true identity. However, the murderous aura around Li Juhun was too strong, as if it could tear everything apart. "What's your name?" At this time, Li Juhun suddenly opened his mouth. His demonic eyes locked on Nie Tian. His voice was incomparably cold, and emitted a chilling aura that made people's hearts palpitate. His attitude was very arrogant, and it was completely the tone of a superior. Nie Tian frowned slightly and withdrew his gaze. It was as if he hadn't heard Li Juhun's words, and directly turned to leave. Seeing this scene, everyone couldn't help but be stunned. For a moment, they couldn't figure out what Nie Tian wanted to do. "QL 11-inch, are you ignoring me?" When Li Juhun saw that Nie Tian was ignoring him, he immediately raised his voice. At the same time, his eyes trembled, and a cold, murderous aura rolled out. It was like an invisible giant hand that pressed down on Nie Tian. Nie Tian felt a chill on his back. His body trembled slightly, and he wanted to release the power of the stars. But at this moment, he felt another power appear, and actually blocked the murderous aura in the air. Nie Tian turned slightly, and saw that the person who had attacked was none other than Lai Yin Jiufeng. He couldn't help but feel strange, and looked at Lai Yin Jiufeng with a puzzled expression. When Nie Tian was fighting with the others, Lai Yin Jiufeng had been watching coldly from the side. Why did he suddenly attack now? Lai Yin Jiufeng didn't look at Nie Tian. His fiery eyes were fixed on Li Juhun. Li Juhun was stunned for a moment, and couldn't help but let out a cry of surprise. He clearly hadn't expected someone to block the murderous aura for Nie Tian at this moment. "Who are you?" Li Juhun asked coldly, the murderous aura in his eyes growing stronger. "Your eyes are very interesting." Lai Yin Jiufeng didn't answer Li Juhun. Instead, he laughed strangely. "You're courting death." This was the second time Li Juhun had been ignored. He flew into a rage and let out a fierce roar. His eyes flashed with a cold light, and a beam of blood-red light appeared. It flew towards Lai Yin Jiufeng. Lai Yin Jiufeng seemed to have anticipated Li Juhun's attack. He moved in advance and cleverly dodged the attack. Everyone was stunned by the scene in front of them. The way they looked at Lai Yin Jiufeng changed. Everyone thought that Lai Yin Jiufeng was a reckless fool, but they didn't think that his strength would be so strange. Li Juhun exclaimed in surprise. "Who are you?" he asked coldly. What he had used just now was the devil eyes of supreme slaughter. It was so fast that it could kill a peak paramount god in an instant. But Lai Yin Jiufeng had dodged it. That was very strange. There was no doubt that Lai Yin Jiufeng was very familiar with the devil eyes of supreme slaughter. "You'll know who I am soon enough." Lai Yin Jiufeng smiled coldly. "Now is not the time to fight. Let's meet again during the hunt." His voice was low, and his words were filled with cold, killing intent. Li Juhun's pupils shrank slightly. Shock appeared on his face. He suddenly felt that his devil eyes of supreme slaughter were a little restless when he looked at Lai Yin Jiufeng. Chapter 2380. Who is this person? Li Juhun looked at Lai Yin Jiufeng from afar. His murderous eyes were filled with surprise. He could feel that the supreme killing demon Eye and Lai Yin Jiufeng seemed to have some sort of connection. When Lai Yin Jiufeng looked over, the supreme killing demon Eye became a little restless, as if it was about to lose control. "It's been a long time since I had the demon Eye of supreme killing transplanted. My body has long since adapted to it. Why is it so restless in front of this person?" Li Juhun thought in shock. Lai Yin Jiufeng's lips curled into a strange smile. He turned away from Li Juhun and said to Nie Tian, "Let's go." Nie Tian nodded slightly, but he was very puzzled. Lai Yin Jiufeng would never do meaningless things. The fact that he was so interested in Li Juhun meant that there was something wrong with Li Juhun. "Don't tell me that Li Juhun is related to the 7 murders?" Nie Tian had a guess in an instant, and his eyes shone with a blazing light. He felt an unprecedented murderous aura from Li Juhun. This undoubtedly meant that Li Juhun's murderous aura was very strong. Especially his eyes. They were practically eyes of murderous intent. The identity of 7 murders was that of the heaven-punishing demon Heart. His murderous aura was definitely very strong. Li Juhun fit this description perfectly. Li Juhun is 7 murders? Nie Tian frowned and guessed again. But he denied this guess in the next moment. He did not feel the aura of the vein of 3 lives on Li Juhun. If Li Juhun was a slaughter body, then it must be the vein of 3 lives. Lien Jiufeng's attitude towards Li Juhun was very cold, as if he was facing an enemy. This also meant that Li Juhun was definitely not 7 murders. If he's not the 7 kills, then what's the relationship between him and the 7 kills? Nie Tian's eyebrows furrowed. He was very sure that even if Li Juhun was not 7 murders, he must be related to 7 murders in some way. Otherwise, Lien Jiufeng would not have suddenly interfered. Li Juhun stood high in the sky and looked at Nie Tian and Lien Jiufeng. He did not stop them. He felt an indescribable fear towards Lien Jiufeng. We must kill this man when we hunt in the dark sea. Li Juhun's eyes focused. His heart turned cold as he spoke. Of course, he could sense that Blaze Ninedust was only a late paramount god. No matter how freakishly talented he was, he couldn't possibly be that strong. If he wanted to kill Lien Jiufeng, he, Li Juhun, wouldn't even need to do it himself. He was the captain of the hunting squad in the first city, and he had nearly 50 peak paramount gods under his command. How could he possibly fail to kill Lien Jiufeng? He wasn't in a hurry to kill Lien Jiufeng, so he chose not to act now. Nie Tian, once the hunt begins, we must kill that guy. Nie Tian and Lien Jiufeng walked side by side. Lien Jiufeng suddenly sent a sound transmission to Nie Tian. Nie Tian was slightly surprised. He asked, Lien Jiufeng, who is that person? He's related to 7 kills, right? His eyes belong to 7 kills. Lien Jiufeng nodded and replied solemnly. 7 kills eyes. Nie Tian's eyes trembled and he almost cried out. No wonder Li Juhun's eyes were so murderous. They didn't belong to him. They belonged to 7 kills. But in the next moment, Nie Tian's expression turned to one of worry. Li Juhun was extremely strong. In fact, he was even stronger than most of the city lords of major cities. In a fight to the death, Nie Tian didn't have much confidence in defeating Li Juhun. However, he could tell that Li Juhun was a little wary of Lien Jiufeng. This puzzled Nie Tian. He felt that Lien Jiufeng's combat power should be weaker than Li Juhun's. Why would Li Juhun be afraid of Lien Jiufeng? The scene was relatively calm after that. QL11 Nie Tian reminded Jun Aoqing and Nie Qingwan to be ready to enter the 9 extremities if there was any danger. The Dark Sea hunt was obviously a deadly battle. It was full of danger. Nie Tian only cared about Jun Aoqing and Nie Qingwan's lives. As for the others, he would protect them if he could. If he wasn't strong enough, he wouldn't force them. After a while, an old man from the first main city announced the rules of the hunt. Then, he announced the start of the hunt. Next, the hunters from each city entered the sea one after another. All the hunters jumped directly into the sea. Soon, it was the hunters from the 7th main city. Without any hesitation, Nie Tian and the others jumped into the Dark Sea. The hunt lasted for 10 days. During this period, no hunters were allowed to leave early. If anyone tried to leave the sea, they would be mercilessly hunted down. After 10 days, the results of the hunters' hunt would be used as a basis to determine the ranking. The moment they entered the sea, Nie Tian felt a wave of dark energy attack him. The terrifying pressure made him feel slightly uncomfortable. The pressure in the sea was extremely great. Martial practitioners below the overgod level would be crushed to death if they entered the sea. Fortunately, Nie Qingwan wasn't too weak. She could still withstand the water pressure in the sea. Nie Tian and the others continued to sink and stopped in the water about 100 meters deep. In this water layer, they could hide their aura very well and not be discovered by other hunters. Anyway, the hunt would last for 10 days. Nie Tian wasn't in a hurry. He wanted to familiarize himself with the environment in the sea first. The space here is so strange. At this time, June Ouching seemed to notice something. She frowned and wondered. June Ouching, what did you find? Nie Tian could sense the space within 5 kilometers with his divine sense. However, he didn't find anything strange. He couldn't help asking. The space here seems to be folded. June Ouching's eyes flickered. She said uncertainly, "Yes." At this time, Yang Qi said. He nodded and said, "Miss June is right. The space in the dark sea is indeed folded." Folded space? Nie Tian was stunned. Then, a wisp of flame surged out of his palm. It instantly turned into several universe lines and surged in the space. At this time, a strange scene happened. Nie Tian sensed that the universe lines he released actually became folded. It was as if the surrounding space was compressed. Universe lines and universe lines were the basic elements that made up spacetime. When they entered space, they actually appeared to be folded. This undoubtedly meant that the surrounding space was indeed in a folded state. No wonder the water pressure in the dark sea is so much more terrifying than ordinary sea areas. It's caused by folded space. Nie Tian frowned and murmured, "Yes." Yang Qi nodded again and said, "It's precisely because the space in the dark sea is highly folded that the water we are in is actually much larger than it looks." Nie Tian nodded slightly. He could understand this point. If the entire space in the dark sea was completely stretched out, the water area would be several times larger. The dark sea black prison was indeed a special world. The space outside was curved and spiral, while the space in the sea was folded and compressed. If the space in the dark sea black prison was extended, it might be bigger than a domain. Chapter 2381. June Ouching, what's wrong? Nie Tian saw June Ouching's strange expression and asked with a gloomy face. QL11 He knew that June Ouching was a space-time attribute swordsman. In this kind of folded space, her perception was very strong. "Listen." June Ouching waved her hand to signal everyone to be quiet and said in a low voice. Everyone couldn't help but become nervous and quiet. Their hearts were in their throats as they carefully listened to everything around them. Whoosh! Nie Tian activated the holographic divine runes and spread his divine sense to the surrounding space. Sure enough, he heard a rustling sound as if something was approaching them. Whoosh, 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 boom! After a while, the sound in the water became louder and finally became a roar. "Everyone be careful, form a circle." Nie Tian felt that there were countless black shadows appearing in the distance and immediately reacted and shouted in a low voice. When everyone heard Nie Tian's words, they instantly formed a circle. Those who were slightly weaker stood in the circle, and those who were stronger stood outside. Boom! The next moment, a black shadow appeared in the water. It was huge and boundless. At a glance, it was as huge as 10,000 meters. "What kind of monster is this?" Someone cried out in horror, his voice trembling in fear. "Don't panic, everyone. Hold your positions," Nie Tian bellowed, his eyes shining with the light of passion. He clearly saw that the huge black shadow in front of him was not a huge monster, but many small black shadows gathered together. It should be some kind of sea beast group. Boom! Hum! Just as Nie Tian's voice fell, the huge black shadow in front of them rolled over. Suddenly, the roar reached the extreme, shaking people's eardrums as if they were about to burst. Boom! Without hesitation, Nie Tian directly brandished his sword. The sword's shadow was like a mad dragon, rushing straight out and bombarding the sea beast group, forcibly tearing a path. "Charge forward!" Seeing this, Nie Tian roared and took the lead, charging directly into the sea beast group. The others followed closely, all of them releasing their auras and forming a barrier to stop the sea beast. Only now did everyone see the true appearance of the sea beasts. They weren't very large, only a few meters long. They had the head of a wolf, but their limbs were fins. At the top of their heads was a very sharp horn. "It's a single-horned wolf shark." Yang Qi exclaimed as he recognized the sea beast. Nie Tian and the others narrowed their eyes. None of them knew what a horned wolf shark was. Exalted Nie Tian, Yang Qi said, horned wolversharks are 7th-grade sea beasts. They're extremely powerful, and their horns are so deadly that they could easily rip a paramount god's martial body to shreds. This little thing is actually a 7th-grade sea beast. Nangong Lin cried out in disbelief. The single-horned wolf shark was too small. Many low-rank spirit beasts were bigger than it, let alone divine beasts. 7th-grade sea beasts were equivalent to 7th-grade divine beasts, and their strength was equivalent to an early-stage or mid-stage paramount god. Weaker 7th-grade sea beasts had the battle prowess of an early-stage paramount god, while stronger 7th-grade sea beasts had the battle prowess of a mid-stage paramount god. It was hard to believe that a unicorn wolf shark, which was only a few meters long, could fight an early-stage paramount god. Lord Commander, these single-horned wolf sharks are all rank 7 sea beasts. If we can kill one of them and obtain a beast core, we can get 1 point. Suddenly, someone exclaimed out excitedly. That's right. The final ranking of the Dark Sea Hunt was based on the results of the hunter's hunt. The result of the hunt was the beast core obtained by the hunter. 1 7th-grade heartstone was worth 1 point. 1 8th-grade heartstone was worth 100 points. 1 9th-grade heartstone was worth 10,000 points. Of course, there were also sea beasts in the Dark Sea prison that could surpass 9th-grade. If one could kill a unicorn wolf shark, 1 9th-grade heartstone would be worth 1,000,000 points. However, in the history of the Dark Sea Hunt, no hunter had ever killed a unicorn wolf shark. It was common to hear that a hunter was eaten by a unicorn wolf shark. The unicorn wolf shark was a unicorn wolf shark, and 1 heartstone was worth 1 point. Although it wasn't much, it was still a considerable amount of points. These little bastards aren't very strong. Perfect for killing. Following that, yet another voice boomed out as that figure actually moved and bolted out toward the pack of wolf sharks. Come back! Nie Tian roared, wanting to stop the person, but he was too late. The figure disappeared into the school of unicorn wolf sharks. Yang Qi was stunned at first, but then his face darkened. Everyone, listen up! Without Lord Nie Tian's orders, don't act rashly. The person who had charged out was one of Yang Qi's subordinates. Clearly, he hadn't gotten used to Nie Tian's position as captain, so he charged out without permission. The other 2 had intended to make a move as well, but Yang Qi's roar had forced them to remain motionless. Save me! Right at this moment, a shrill and miserable howl resounded. It was the person who had charged out earlier. What happened? Yang Qi's brows furrowed as he cried out in alarm. That person was obviously attacked, so he screamed for help. That said, he was already a late paramount god, so even if the wolf sharks were numerous, they wouldn't pose a threat to him. Don't bother with him. Nie Tian growled and stabbed out with his sword again. Sword shadows opened up a path, wanting to rush out of the single-horned wolf sharks. However, there were too many horned wolf sharks. There were probably hundreds of thousands of them, and the school stretched for thousands of meters. It wouldn't be easy to charge out. Woo! At this moment, a low roar sounded. It sounded like a wolf's howl, but it also sounded like a bugle horn. What's that sound? Nie Tian frowned, but he didn't stop and continued to rush forward. Nie Tian, there's a big guy up ahead. Jun Aoqing warned Nie Tian. A big guy. Nie Tian blurted, his expression darkening. The single-horned wolf sharks were only a few meters long, so what was this big guy up ahead? It's the unicorn wolf shark emperor. At this moment, Yang Qi suddenly realized something and cried out in shock. Nie Tian's expression flickered, and he sent his divine sense out in all directions. About 1,000 meters up ahead, he could sense over 100 single-horned wolf sharks, each of them nearly 100 meters long. They were surrounding an enormous single-horned wolf shark, and in the center of their encirclement was a 1,000-meter-long single-horned wolf shark. Obviously, The person who had charged out of the school had been killed by the single-horned wolf shark. Based on the size of the single-horned wolf shark, its battle prowess was comparable to that of a late paramount god. As for the single-horned wolf shark, its battle prowess was definitely higher than that of an ordinary peak paramount god. Lord Nyetian, those large single-horned wolf sharks are wolf shark guards, and the giant wolf shark they are protecting is Shark Emperor. Yang Qi, who had also seen the scene in front of them, exclaimed, "Woo!" Almost as soon as Yang Qi's voice fell, the one-horned wolf emperor shark actually growled again. Chapter 2382. All of a sudden, Nyetian had a bad feeling, and his face darkened. The wolf shark guards were nearly 100 meters long, and they were as strong as rank 8 sea beasts. They were the equivalent of a human late-stage paramount god. The combined attack of dozens of wolf shark guards was extremely powerful. Boom! Nyetian reacted immediately. He glanced at Lai Yin Jiufeng and slashed out with his sword. Boom! At the same time, Lai Yin Jiufeng attacked as well. He thrust out his palm and released the power of golden flames. It actually formed a flaming palm in the water. Bang! Bang! In the next moment, two muffled sounds rang out. The two wolf shark guards were killed by Nyetian and Lai Yin Jiufeng. Their bodies turned into bloody light and dissipated. However, the other wolf shark guards were agitated by the bloody aura and attacked even more violently. Nyetian frowned and stabbed out with his sword again. Several sword images howled out and blocked the attacks of several wolf shark guard. On the other side, Lai Yin Jiufeng was also blocking several wolf shark guard. Although these wolf shark guards were only as strong as a late paramount god, their beastly bodies were as strong as peak paramount god. Moreover, being in the water was very beneficial to them. Nyetian and the others were suppressed by the water and weakened to a certain extent. Nyetian's sword split into multiple sword shadows, each of which was weaker than the last. Surprisingly, they only managed to injure the wolf shark guard, but didn't kill it. Lai Yin Jiufeng's situation wasn't much better than Nyetian's. Dozens of wolf shark guards charged forward like flood dragons. They were filled with killing intent. Nyetian frowned. He couldn't hide the worry on his face. If the wolf shark guards separated them, the situation would be very dangerous. Even Nyetian was having a hard time facing so many single-horned wolf sharks and wolf shark guards alone. Moreover, there was an emperor wolf shark among the wolf sharks that was waiting for an opportunity to attack. Bang! 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 At this moment, countless wolf shark guards fiercely collided with the aura shield around everyone's body, stirring up terrifying turbid waves in the water. Under the terrifying impact, the imposing aura barrier showed signs of crumbling. It was naturally impossible for an ordinary single-horned wolf shark to break through the barrier. However, the impact of the wolf shark guard was too great. Moreover, the barrier was originally very weak. After receiving the impact, it showed signs of collapsing. Hold on! Upon seeing this, Nyetian roared in a low voice. After which, boundless astral energy gushed forth from his body, transforming into an astral soul shield that enveloped everyone. Lai Yin Jiufeng, we need to get out of here. Nyetian turned around to look at Lai Yin Jiufeng, and said solemnly after protecting everyone. Yes. Lai Yin Jiufeng nodded. He then looked at Nangong Ling and said, Nangong, charge with me. Yes, Your Highness. Nangong Ling nodded his head heavily. His entire body surged with the power of purple lightning. Streaks of purple lightning circled around his body like wild snake. Kill! Lai Yin Jiufeng roared and charged at the front of everyone. He was like a ball of fire as he forcefully opened a path. Nangong Ling was very smart. He continuously released the power of purple lightning and greatly stimulated Lai Yin Jiufeng's golden flame power. Bang! 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 Everywhere Lai Yin Jiufeng passed, muffled sounds would ring out. It was the sound of the single-horned wolf shark and the wolf shark guard exploding. Amidst the bloody light, the strong smell of blood filled the surrounding waters within tens of thousands of meters. At the same time, countless wolf-shark guards heavily collided with the astral soul shield. Nie Tian relied on the powerful astral energy in his body to forcibly resist the impact. Right now, he was fighting against dozens of wolf-shark guards with his own power. Right now, he had to split his attention to resist the powerful water pressure. At this time, Nie Tian saw that they had arrived in front of the giant single-horned wolf shark. The single-horned wolf shark emperor. Yang Qi cried out in shock. Lian Jiufeng and Nangong Ling were extremely ferocious. They ignored everything else and charged straight at him. Lian Jiufeng's entire body was burning with flames. At the same time, he moved slightly to the side and avoided a direct collision with the wolf shark emperor. Roar! The single-horned wolf shark emperor let out a low growl and immediately moved. It was extremely fast, like the wind and lightning. It stabbed straight at Yang Qi like a sharp arrow. Damn it! Nie Tian immediately growled when he sensed that something was wrong. His astral soul shield had already cracked from the attacks of the wolf shark guards. There was no way it could withstand the wolf shark emperor's attack. Nie Tian, attack first. At this time, Lian Jiufeng actually roared angrily and shouted madly, "Kill the wolf shark emperor!" After saying that, his figure dashed over like a fireball towards the emperor wolf shark. My God, is this guy crazy? Yang Qi's face paled at the sight of this, and he cried out in horror. The single-horned wolf shark emperor was stronger than the average rank 9 sea beast. Its combat power was comparable to a peak paramount god, and its body was extremely tough. Ordinary peak paramount god martial practitioners couldn't break through its defenses. Lian Jiufeng charged straight at it. It was too ferocious. Nie Tian couldn't help but tremble when he saw Lian Jiufeng charge over. But in the next moment, he understood. The corner of his mouth twitched, and he said in pleasant surprise, "Smart." Lian Jiufeng was attacking the single horn on the wolf shark emperor's head. The single horn was the wolf shark's deadliest weapon. It was also the wolf shark emperor's fatal weakness. As long as the wolf shark emperor's single horn was broken, this beast could only wait for death. Lian Jiufeng was taking the risk to break the wolf shark emperor's horn. Nie Tian immediately understood Lian Jiufeng's intentions. He suddenly moved and charged. Two madmen! Yang Qi suddenly saw Nie Tian move. His heart shook and he almost shouted. Boom! At this time, Lian Jiufeng's figure arrived. Terrifying flames burst out of his body and instantly wrapped around the wolf shark emperor's single horn. The single horn was the toughest part of the wolf shark emperor's body. Even Lian Jiufeng's power of golden flames couldn't destroy it. Whoa! However, the scorching power of the golden flame had caused great damage to the emperor wolf shark, which made it roar mournfully. The surrounding single-horned wolf sharks and their guards heard the wolf shark emperor's howl and immediately went crazy. They attacked the group even more violently. QL11 at the same time, the wolf shark emperor moved and pounced at Lian Jiufeng. Lian Jiufeng didn't move. Instead, he kept releasing the power of golden flames to burn the wolf shark emperor's single horn. Nie Tian. Lian Jiufeng growled just as the wolf shark emperor was about to pounce. Now's the time. Nie Tian's voice sounded at almost the same time. A sharp sword shadow suddenly appeared. Sword intent surged, and the light of the sword flickered with piercing cold light in the water. Boom! The sword shadow landed and directly hit the wolf shark emperor's single horn. Chapter 2383. Nie Tian's sword fell and cut off the emperor wolf shark's horn. The shocking scene caused Yang Qi and the others to gasp. They couldn't believe their eyes. They couldn't believe that Nie Tian and Lian Jiufeng had actually cut off the emperor wolf shark's horn together. It had to be said that Nie Tian and Lian Jiufeng's cooperation was perfect. Although the power of the blazing 9 sharp edges couldn't destroy the emperor wolf shark's horn, the scorching heat greatly weakened the toughness of the horn. At the most crucial moment, Nie Tian followed up with a sword strike and cut off the emperor wolf shark's horn. Awo! The emperor wolf shark's huge body suddenly froze when its horn was cut off. It began to howl in pain. The surrounding one-horned wolf sharks and their guards immediately went berserk. They madly charged at Nye Tian and the others. Nye Tian's sword intent surged out of his body, condensing into countless sword shadows that shot out in all directions. QL11 He had no time to pay attention to these one-horned wolf sharks. His eyes were fixed on the emperor wolf shark, his killing intent clear. Right now, he wanted to kill the emperor wolf shark. The emperor wolf shark's horn had been cut off, so it was at its weakest. If he didn't kill it now, when would he? Lai Yinjiufeng's eyes were filled with killing intent. He had the same thought as Nye Tian. The two figures moved at almost the same time. This time, Lai Yinjiufeng attacked first. He slapped down with his palm, an endless power of flames bombarded the emperor wolf shark's head. The emperor wolf shark's body was very strong, but it became much weaker under the burning power of the golden flames. Boom! In the next moment, Nye Tian's sword shadow fell and cut a huge bloody wound on the emperor wolf shark's head. Lai Yinjiufeng stretched out his hand when he saw this. The golden flames formed a hand of flames that reached into the bloody wound and took out the emperor wolf shark's beast core. The moment the beast core was taken out, the emperor wolf shark's eyes lost their light. Its giant body stiffened and began to sink. At the same time, the single-horned wolf sharks and their guards seemed to have sensed something and fled in all directions. The single-horned wolf shark was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared. In the dark water, there was only blood and the slowly sinking body of the emperor wolf shark. Dead, dead. Yang Qi looked at the sinking body of the emperor wolf shark. He was so shocked that his voice was trembling. He never thought that Nye Tian and Lai Yinjiufeng would be able to kill an emperor wolf shark in the blink of an eye. The emperor wolf shark's battle strength was frightening. Even if it were those city lord-level powerhouses of the main cities, they would find it troublesome to go against it head-on. Only now did Yang Qi realize that Nye Tian was not the only monster-like existence in his team. The strength Lai Yinjiufeng displayed just now was no weaker than Nye Tian. After killing the emperor wolf shark, Nye Tian let out a long breath. He swept his gaze across the crowd and laughed. He said, "Is everyone all right?" "Nye Tian, we are fine." Jun Aoqing smiled slightly, indicating that she and Nye Qingwan were fine. Nye Tian nodded and scanned the crowd with his consciousness. He only relaxed after confirming that everyone was fine. One hunter had died in the attack of the wolf shark. However, he had asked for it himself. He had attacked without permission and wanted to kill the single-horned wolf shark. "Nye Tian, for you." At this time, Lai Yinjiufeng suddenly spoke and threw the beast core in his hand to Nye Tian. Nye Tian caught the beast core and put it away. He smiled faintly and said, "Our cooperation just now was not bad." Although he and Lai Yinjiufeng were still enemies, they were at most friends who hadn't fallen out with each other. But it had to be said that the cooperation between the two was very good. It was flawless. If Nye Tian had acted just a little bit slower, Lai Yinjiufeng would have been heavily injured. Lai Yinjiufeng chose to believe Nye Tian at the most crucial moment. This made Nye Tian feel very strange. "Before we save 7 kills, we are friends," Lai Yinjiufeng said indifferently. The smile on his lips was very strange. Nye Tian chuckled and didn't say anything. Nye Tian and the others had not suffered heavy losses in the attack of the wolf sharks. They had also gained a beast core of an emperor wolf shark. An emperor wolf shark's beast core was equivalent to a rank 9 beast core. It was worth 10,000 points. With this beast core alone, the 7th main city could keep its position as a main city. At this moment, Xianyuan Yunsong, who had been silent all this time, suddenly said with a frown, "Your Highness, I feel that the attack of the wolf sharks is a little strange. It's as if these wolf sharks are coming for us." "I feel the same way." Nangong Lin's eyes flashed and he said. Lai Yinjiufeng frowned and nodded after a long time. He looked at Nye Tian and said, Nie Tian, I feel that someone is behind this attack. Nie Tian's expression changed slightly and his eyes darkened. In fact, he had the same feeling. These single-horned wolf sharks were coming for them. Lord Nie Tian, the attack this time is very strange. Yang Qi walked over and said, according to what I know, the wolf sharks live in the deep sea. Also, the emperor wolf shark will not come out to hunt or appear in the shallow sea. The wolf shark's sudden attack is indeed puzzling. As he spoke, Yang Qi furrowed his brows in confusion. Nie Tian's eyes flashed and he murmured, it seems that the attack of the wolf sharks is not as simple as it seems on the surface. We might have been targeted by someone. When he said this, he looked up at Lai Yanjiufeng. Both their eyes trembled and they thought of the same person at the same time. Li Zhuhan. Although Nie Tian and Lai Yanjiufeng did not say it out loud, they both knew that they were thinking of the same person. This guy is a little interesting. Lai Yanjiufeng laughed and smiled strangely. He said indifferently, I haven't even attacked him yet, but he's already taken the initiative. What are you going to do next, Lai Yanjiufeng? Nie Tian asked when he saw Lai Yanjiufeng's strange expression. It's simple. I'm going to drag Li Zhuhan out. Lai Yanjiufeng's eyes flashed with a dark light. His eyes were filled with killing intent. Nie Tian frowned and looked at Lai Yanjiufeng. He didn't know what the latter was going to do. Lai Yanjiufeng did not say anything. Instead, he took out something that looked like a compass and let it float above his palm. The 3 lives samsara disc. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed when he saw the disc. He exclaimed in his heart. He had seen the same disc before. It was the 3 lives samsara disc. Back then, Earth Chief had brought the 3 lives samsara disc to Nie Tian and Cher. He wanted to get Cher to activate the 3 lives samsara disc. But in the end, Nie Tian accidentally activated the 3 lives samsara disc. Nie Tian did not think that the 3 lives samsara disc would be in Lai Yanjiufeng's hands. Do you think you can hide your demon eyes of supreme killing? Lai Yanjiufeng smiled cold. A wave of demonic energy surged out of his palm and entered the 3 lives samsara disc. Then, the 3 lives samsara disc flashed, and demonic halos appeared on the disc, gradually forming a map. Nie Tian took a step forward and saw 2 dots of light appear on the 3 lives samsara disc. One represented their current location, and the other represented the demon eyes of supreme killing. Upon closer inspection, Nie Tian found that the 2 dots of light were not far from each other. They were only tens of thousands of meters apart. Chapter 2384. Li Zhuhan is coming for us. Nie Tian looked at the 3 lives samsara disc and realized what was going on. He exclaimed in shock. Let him come. If he doesn't, I'll go look for him myself. Lai Yanjiufeng stared coldly at the 3 lives samsara disc, his eyes filled with killing intent. Nie Tian frowned, unable to conceal the worry on his face. He had no idea how strong Li Zhuhan was, but since he was the son of the Dark Emperor and one of the Dark Sea 9 demons, he was definitely stronger than Bai Fengming, Yuan Lai, and the others. Nie Tian didn't have the confidence to fight Li Zhuhan. What was more troublesome was that Li Zhuhan had nearly 50 peak paramount gods with him. Even if the strength of these people was not very strong, the suppression in terms of numbers was still very terrifying. If Li Zhuhan came, Nie Tian couldn't guarantee everyone's safety. But Lai Yanjiufeng wasn't worried at all. Instead, he was excited. His eyes shone brightly. Nie Tian knew that Lai Yanjiufeng was anxious to see Li Zhuhan because of the latter's demon eye of extreme killing. Moreover, Li Zhuhan might know where 7 kills was imprisoned. Lai Yanjiufeng exclaimed in surprise while Nie Tian was worried. He seemed very unhappy. Nie Tian looked at the 3 lives samsara disc and found that another speck of light had changed direction and was moving away from them. What's going on? Nie Tian went blank for a moment. Li Zhuhan was clearly coming for them. Why did he suddenly change direction? Trying to run? Lai Yanjiufeng frowned, his eyes cold. I'd like to see where you can run to." With these words, he put the 3 live samsara disc away, turned to Nye Tian and said, "Nye Tian, let's part ways here. You're going to chase after Li Juhan?" Nye Tian was taken aback for a moment. "Yes." Lai Yin Jiufeng nodded, his eyes filled with killing intent. Li Juhan possessed the demon eye of extreme slaughter. So, he couldn't possibly let him off. "My lord, Li Juhan is the leader of the 9 demons. It is rumored that his strength is even more terrifying than that of the city lords of the main cities. Do you really want to chase after him?" Yang Qi was taken aback. Then, he asked nervously. He had already seen how terrifying Lai Yin Jiufeng was. But, he didn't think that the latter's strength was enough to fight against Li Juhan. "Lai Yin Jiufeng, are you sure you want to do this?" Nye Tian asked again with a dark expression. He shared the same concerns as Yang Qi. "Don't worry, I'll be fine." Lai Yin Jiufeng smiled faintly. He looked very confident. Then, he suddenly looked at Nye Qinwan and reminded Nye Tian, "Nye Tian, you must protect her. Don't let anything happen to her." Nye Tian was stunned for a moment, but he still nodded. Nye Qinwan was his cousin. Even if Lai Yin Jiufeng hadn't told him to, he would have protected her anyway. However, Nye Tian found it very strange that Lai Yin Jiufeng cared so much about Nye Qinwan. "I'm leaving." Lai Yin Jiufeng nodded slightly. He turned around and left without hesitation. Nangong Lin and Xianyuan Yunsong followed him. The 3 figures quickly disappeared. "Lai Yin Jiufeng, what is he doing?" Nye Tian looked in the direction that the 3 people had disappeared in, puzzled. Lai Yin Jiufeng had gathered 3 people who had fused with origin energy, and he had specifically told Nye Tian to protect Nye Qinwan. He clearly had a purpose, but Nye Tian couldn't guess what Lai Yin Jiufeng was planning. He had a feeling that Lai Yin Jiufeng had entered the Dark Sea Abyss prison for some other reason other than to save 7 kills. Lai Yin Jiufeng's departure worried Nye Tian. But he believed that Lai Yin Jiufeng would be able to protect himself even if he couldn't kill Li Juhan. He knew that Lai Yin Jiufeng had a golden flame ancestral dragon that hadn't appeared yet. "Lord Nye Tian, why is Lord Jiufeng chasing after Li Juhan?" Yang Qi came to Nye Tian's side and asked in puzzlement. Li Juhan could be said to be the strongest person in this Dark Sea hunt, and he was also the captain of the first city's hunting team. He was someone that no one was willing to provoke. But Lai Yin Jiufeng had gone to find Li Juhan. Yang Qi couldn't understand. Personal grudges. Nye Tian smiled and didn't explain too much. Yang Qi was stunned. He didn't know what Nye Tian was talking about at all. Li Juhan had 7 kills eyes, and Lai Yin Jiufeng and 7 kills were both heaven-punishing demon hearts of 3 transformations. It wasn't wrong to say that Li Juhan and Lai Yin Jiufeng had a personal grudge. Lai Yin Jiufeng didn't bring Nye Tian with him when he went to chase after Li Juhan. Perhaps he was worried that Nye Tian and the others would become a burden to him. "Lord Nye Tian, where are we going now?" Yang Qi asked cautiously. He trusted Nye Tian even more after the fierce battle just now. Nye Tian smiled faintly and said, "The Dark Sea hunt has just begun. Let us familiarize ourselves with the environment of the Dark Sea first." The Dark Sea hunt was 10 days long, and it had just begun. Nye Tian planned to familiarize himself with the environment first. The battle just now had made him understand the strangeness of the space in the Dark Sea even more deeply. The folded space had a huge impact on his ability to wield his strength. Otherwise, he should have been able to deal with the wolf shark pack easily. All right. Yang Qi was very happy to hear that Nye Tian wanted him to lead the way. He nodded and said, "Lord Nye Tian, let's go to Dragonfish Valley first. There are many rank 7 and 8 sea beasts hiding there. It's a good place to hunt." Nye Tian nodded in agreement and let Yang Qi lead the way in front. Dragonfish Valley was one of the largest sea valleys in the Dark Sea. There were many sea beasts inside, and their ranks were not very high. Very few rank 9 sea beasts appeared. Moreover, even if there were rank 9 sea beasts, they were relatively weak, at least much weaker than the one-horned wolf emperor shark. Yang Qi was obviously very familiar with the Dark Sea. He led Nye Tian and the others toward Dragonfish Valley with ease. As they sank deeper and deeper, Nye Tian felt the water pressure around them getting stronger. Qingwan, can you still hold on? Nye Tian was worried that Nye Qingwan couldn't resist the powerful water pressure and couldn't help but ask. I'm fine. Nye Qingwan smiled faintly, appearing very stubborn. Nye Tian nodded slightly and signaled Jun ouching with his eyes, telling the latter to keep an eye on Nye Qingwan's situation. For Nye Qingwan, this kind of water pressure was a very good exercise. It was very beneficial to her martial body cultivation. After a while, Nye Tian and the others arrived outside a deep-sea valley. Lord Nye Tian, the Dragonfish Valley is just ahead. Yang Qi smiled faintly and said with a proud expression. Let's go over. Nye Tian nodded and prepared to go over. Help! But at this moment, a mournful cry for help suddenly sounded in front of them, followed by a tragic howl. QL 11-inch everyone, be careful! Nye Tian immediately became nervous. He glanced at Jun Ouching and asked the latter to pay attention to protect Nye Qingwan. Jun Ouching nodded solemnly, looking slightly nervous. Nye Tian stood at the forefront and spread out his divine sense, sensing ahead. He faintly sensed a huge aura coming from the sea valley ahead. It was extremely violent and restless. Chapter 2385. Boom! The surging impact swept past, as if the surrounding waters within tens of thousands of meters were shaking. Such a strong aura! Nye Tian frowned slightly and couldn't help but exclaim. He could clearly feel that there was a terrifying sea beast in the sea valley ahead, and its aura was even stronger than the emperor wolf shark. Nye Tian, this roar seems to be from the rank 9 sea beast, 3-horned draconic bull. Yang Qi stood behind Nye Tian. His face was full of horror, and even his voice was slightly trembling. 3-horned draconic bull? Nye Tian was stunned for a moment, and his divine sense probed more carefully. Roar! Immediately, another low roar sounded, setting off wild waves in the water. Yes, it's 3-horned draconic bull. Yang Qi nodded heavily, very sure of his judgment, but the next moment, his face changed, as if a little strange, and said, 3-horned draconic bull is a gentle sea beast, why is this roar so violent? Nye Tian frowned and asked, how is the strength of 3-horned draconic bull compared to the emperor wolf shark? 3-horned draconic bull is a real rank 9 sea beast. The muscles on Yang Qi's face trembled slightly, obviously very nervous, and said, under normal circumstances, 3-horned draconic bull is very docile. But when it's in a state of rage, no one knows how strong it is. It's said that when 3-horned draconic bull goes berserk, even the masters of main cities have to take the initiative to retreat. So powerful. Nye Tian's eyes slightly narrowed. It seemed that he had underestimated the strength of 3-horned draconic bull. Help! At this time, another mournful cry for help sounded, but it was immediately drowned by a violent force. Lord Nye Tian, the Draconic Fish Valley is a little strange today, let's change places. Yang Qi's eyes trembled a little, and he said nervously, don't worry, I'll go take a look. Nye Tian smiled faintly, turned to Jun Ouching and said, Ouching, I'll leave this place to you, protect Qingwan for me. Okay. Jun Ouching nodded heavily. Nye Tian's figure moved, and he directly rushed forward. His speed was very fast, and he instantly arrived at the entrance of the sea valley. Save me! At this moment, a figure rushed out from the ocean valley in panic, shouting for help. At the same time, Nye Tian felt a terrifying force howling out, condensing into a violent wave that pressed down on the figure. With such a powerful force, once it smashed down, that person would definitely not have a corpse left. Boom! Nye Tian didn't hesitate at all. His figure moved and he slashed out with his sword. The mighty sword shadow blocked the violent wave and saved that person's life. "Thank you for saving my life, my lord." That person rushed out of the sea valley, and upon seeing Nyetian, he hurriedly bowed to express his gratitude. He seemed to recognize Nyetian, and exclaimed in astonishment, "You are Lord Nyetian? You know me?" Nyetian was taken aback. He glanced at the person in front of him and suddenly remembered that he had seen this person before. This lowly one is called Yuan Wei, a hunter from the fourth main city. That person's eyes trembled, and he said with an embarrassed expression. Nyetian nodded slightly. He had seen this person when Yuan Ing and Yuan Lai provoked the seventh main city. Speaking of which, the fourth main city and the seventh main city were already incompatible like fire and water, so the person in front of him should be considered as Nyetian's enemy. However, Nyetian didn't care about this. He frowned and asked, "What happened in the Sea Valley?" Yuan Wei's eyes trembled slightly, and he seemed to be very frightened. He said, "Lord Nyetian, there is a three-horned draconic bull in the Sea Valley, and it is going berserk. Let's leave this place quickly." "You go," Nyetian said indifferently. His figure moved, and he actually rushed into the Sea Valley. Yuan Wei was stunned for a moment, and he looked at the back of Nyetian and murmured, "Is he crazy? He knows that the three-horned draconic bull is going berserk, but he still wants to go in and die." Nyetian's strength was very strong, but Yuan Wei didn't think that Nyetian could fight against a three-horned draconic bull in a berserk state. At this time, Nyetian's figure had already arrived in the Dragonfish Valley. The scene in front of him made him frown, and his face darkened. At this time, the entire Dragonfish Valley was filled with an extremely strong smell of blood, and there were many dismembered corpses lying in disorder in the valley. Nyetian's eyes swept over, and he roughly guessed that at least 40 to 50 people had died here. These people's strength shouldn't be strong, and most of them were hunters from the vassal cities. QL11 At this time, Nyetian saw a huge shadow moving slowly along the gorge in the depths of the sea valley. Its two eyes were like two blood-red abysses, staring straight at him. What a huge monster! Nyetian's eyes focused, and he couldn't help but exclaim in his heart. At first glance, the huge monster in front of him was more than 3,000 meters long, several times bigger than the wolf-shark emperor. Its huge head looked like a dragon and a bull, and there were 3 black horns on top of its head, like 3 black awls, shining with a cold light. Don't be impulsive. Nyetian could feel the anger of the 3-horned draconic bull, and he couldn't help but tighten his divine realm and say in his heart, "Roar!" Unfortunately, as soon as he finished speaking in his heart, the 3-horned draconic bull roared, and then its huge body rushed straight at him like a moving mountain. Nyetian's eyes flickered as he sensed an incomparably violent impact force, which turned into endless raging waves that blotted out the sky and covered the earth. In an instant, he suddenly felt that the time and space around him seemed to be locked, and his body was sealed, unable to move. "Oh no!" Nyetian screamed in his heart, and his eyes couldn't help but tremble, and his expression suddenly changed. The 3-horned draconic bull's beast body had a very strong impact, and if he was hit by this huge monster head-on, he wouldn't be able to withstand it. Even with Nyetian's martial body, he couldn't bear it. "Break for me!" In the next moment, a flame gushed out of Nyetian's palm, and instantly merged with the space. This was the flame of the edge of the universe, and it immediately caused changes to the surrounding space. Nyetian felt the space loosening a little, and a majestic star energy gushed out of his body, and the star soul wings appeared on his back. Bang! At the moment when he spread his wings, the confined space was directly broken. His wings shook, and his body was like an arrow that left the bow, directly retreating 1,000 meters away. Bang! He retreated in time, and barely avoided the frontal attack of the 3-horned draconic bull, but he was still hit by the wild waves in the water, and his body flew out, smashing heavily on a huge reef. Bang! The impact was so strong that his body directly smashed the huge reef. Nietion's wings shook, and he stabilized his body, and a trace of blood flowed out of the corner of his mouth. That was close. He suddenly looked up at the three-horned draconic bull, and couldn't help but feel lucky. Fortunately, he was hit by the wild waves. If he was hit by the horn of the three-horned draconic bull, even if he didn't die, he would be seriously injured. Nietion estimated that the battle strength of the three-horned draconic bull was definitely comparable to a slightly weaker immortal state peak expert, such as Guiwu Kwangsha. And now, the three-horned draconic bull in front of him was in a state of rage, and its eyes were bloodshot, as if it wanted to eat someone. Chapter 2386. Within the Dragonfish Sea Valley, a man and a beast were facing off against each other. After the Triceratops draconic bull's first attack failed, it seemed to be somewhat fearful of Nietion and did not immediately launch a second attack. As for Nietion, he did not act rashly. He activated the holographic divine imprint and slowly probed the Triceratops draconic bull's body, trying to find its weakness. Strange, this Triceratops draconic bull seems to be heavily injured. At this moment, Nietion discovered something strange and felt puzzled in his heart. He discovered that the abdomen of the Triceratops draconic bull had a 100-meter-long wound that was continuously bleeding. Furthermore, the aura of the draconic bull was continuously weakening. Judging from the aura of the Triceratops draconic bull, ordinary hunters would not be able to cause any harm to it. Then where did the huge wound on its abdomen come from? Roar! Just as Nietion was puzzled, the three-horned draconic bull suddenly let out a low roar again. Immediately after, its huge figure rushed towards Nietion. A violent aura that was ready to be unleashed surged out. Waves of violent waves appeared and spread towards Nietion like ripples. Nietion had nowhere to retreat and could only brace himself to resist. He immediately activated the Astral Soul Shield and the Extreme Yang Heaven Battle Armor, after which, his silhouette flickered and he shot out explosively. The Astral Heaven slash in his hands violently slashed out, and a terrifying sword shadow blasted towards the Triceratops draconic bull. Pung! Pung! The violent waves in the water surged over, and the two layers of defense around Nietion broke apart. He was actually sent flying again. Rumble! At the same time, the sharp sword shadow landed on the back of the Triceratops draconic bull, but it only left a shallow sword mark. Nietion stabilized his body and stared at the sword mark on the body of the Triceratops draconic bull. The defense of the Triceratops draconic bull was stronger than he had expected. His sword strike with all his might had only left behind a shallow sword mark. This beast's body is so strong. No wonder it could kill so many hunters. Nietion frowned as he spoke with a heavy expression. Fortunately, this Triceratops bull was heavily injured. Otherwise, Nietion would have been left with only half of his life from the two previous attacks. Nietion, the Triceratops bull's vital point is the center of its forehead. At this time, Fat Cat's voice suddenly sounded in Nietion's divine sense. The center of its forehead. Nietion's gaze instantly became heated, and his eyes locked onto the center of the Triceratops bull's forehead. Very good. In the next moment, Nietion's lips curled into a cold smile. His silhouette flickered and three sword clones appeared. QL11 then, his main body and the three sword intent clones moved at the same time, attacking the three-horned draconic bull from different directions. Roar! The three-horned dragon bull bellowed, and its entire body surged with a violent aura. A violent wave actually appeared in the water, and like a flood dragon, it directly rushed towards Nietion. Boom! Nietion's eyes suddenly trembled, and he directly stabbed out with his sword. The moment the sword shadow appeared, it was actually shattered by the impact of the wild wave. Bam! With a muffled sound, his figure flew out again, and directly smashed into a huge stone wall behind him. Nietion's body suddenly shook, and his figure jumped out from the stone wall. His whole body was actually dripping with blood. His body shook, and he immediately swept away the blood stains on his body. Immediately, he looked at the three-horned dragon bull with a gloomy gaze and murmured, "This beast is so smart, it can actually directly distinguish my main body." He condensed 3 sword intent clones to confuse the three-horned dragon bull. However, what he did not expect was that his trick was directly seen through by the three-horned dragon bull, and the latter directly identified his main body at a glance. From this, it could be seen that not only was the three-horned dragon bull a strong beast body, but it also had extremely high spiritual intelligence, and was not an ordinary human warrior. However, at this time, the three-horned dragon bull's aura slowly weakened. The huge wound on its abdomen was bleeding too heavily. Moreover, the three-horned dragon bull seemed to be worried about something, and its pair of red eyes were slowly returning to normal, shining with a strange light. "What's going on?" Nye Tian's brows furrowed, and he was extremely surprised. He realized that the three-horned dragon bull seemed to be no longer in a berserk state and actually became much more docile. Strange. Fat Cat was also very puzzled, and she did not know what had happened. However, in the next moment, Fat Cat cried out in surprise and reminded Nye Tian, "Nye Tian, this is a good opportunity, kill it!" Nye Tian frowned and saw that the three-horned dragon bull's body was slightly retreating, and the violent aura around it was also a lot weaker. He kept feeling that there was something wrong, but he could not figure out what was wrong at the moment. And this was indeed the best time for him to kill the three-horned dragon bull. If he missed it, when the three-horned dragon bull went berserk again, it would be very dangerous. Kill! Thinking of this, Nye Tian's face darkened, and his eyes revealed a murderous intent. His body suddenly moved, and the sword intent around him was crazily released to the extreme. Boom! In the next moment, he swung his sword, and a huge sword shadow whizzed out, directly blasting towards the three-horned dragon bull. Roar dash! At this moment, the three-horned dragon bull suddenly let out a low roar, and it was actually still wailing. Immediately, the strangest thing happened. The three-horned dragon bull's body slightly moved forward, but it did not resist at all. Instead, it welcomed the arrival of the fatal sword shadow. Huh! Seeing this scene, Nye Tian's eyes narrowed, and he was extremely surprised. This three-horned dragon bull was actually asking for death. Bang! Just as he was in shock, the sword shadow fell, and directly bombarded the three-horned dragon bull's forehead, directly blasting a huge bloody hole. The three-horned dragon bull's huge body suddenly stopped, and then it became powerless, and it fell into the sea valley. Its pair of eyes stared dead at Nye Tian, and it revealed a look that was not resentment, anger, or violence, but a kind of pleading. The confusion on Nye Tian's face deepened, and he completely did not know what was happening. At this last moment, why did the three-horned dragon bull not resist, and instead, it only wanted to die? What did the pleading look in the three-horned dragon bull's eyes before it died mean? What did it want Nye Tian to do? Roar! Just as Nye Tian was extremely confused, the three-horned dragon bull actually seemed to have recovered from its last moments, and let out another low roar. It turned its head with difficulty, and looked behind it. At this moment, the light in the three-horned dragon bull's eyes completely disappeared, and the last trace of life in its body disappeared. Nye Tian frowned and followed the three-horned dragon bull's gaze, and saw a sea valley cave. His eyes trembled, and he instantly understood something. The wings on his back flapped, and his figure came out of the cave. The cave was not big, and it seemed to be dug out. Nye Tian's figure moved, and he directly went into the cave. Just as he entered the cave, he suddenly felt 3 weak breaths. Huh! Nye Tian's eyes narrowed, and he spread out his divine sense and sensed. The next moment, his eyes suddenly narrowed, and his expression changed. His whole body froze on the spot. He saw, in the deepest part of the cave, 3 young beasts curled up together and were shivering. "This is—" Nietian reacted, and he exclaimed, but he couldn't say the rest of the words. Chapter 2387. Nietian looked at the 3 cubs in front of him, and was stunned for a few seconds, unable to react for a long time. He never thought that there would be 3 three-horned dragon bull cubs in the cave. At this moment, the 3 cubs were tightly curled up together, and there was even a bloody smell on their bodies. Their breath was very weak, as if they could disappear at any time. After a long time, Nietian finally calmed down and let out a deep breath, understanding everything in his heart. He finally understood why the 3-horned dragon bull begged for death at the end, and even had a pleading look in its eyes before it died. It was obvious that the 3-horned dragon bull wanted to use its own death in exchange for the lives of its 3 cubs. It was willing to sacrifice itself, using its own life as the price, so that Nietian would let go of its 3 cubs. The 3-horned dragon bull was seriously injured. It must have known that even if it persisted, it would not be a match for Nietian, so it might as well die. Nietian never thought that the 3-horned dragon bull wanted to die was the truth. He couldn't help but feel a little regretful. It seemed that he shouldn't have killed the 3-horned dragon bull. At this moment, he also understood why the gentle 3-horned dragon bull would suddenly go on a rampage. It turned out that it wanted to protect its cubs. QL 11-inch, that 3-horned dragon bull, why was it so seriously injured? Nietian pondered. He still didn't understand who injured the 3-horned dragon bull. The 3-horned dragon bull's injury was caused by itself. At this moment, Fat Cat's voice sounded, and her tone was also a little serious. "Caused by yourself?" Nietian stared blankly for a moment, not understanding what the little Fat Cat meant. Fat Cat's figure appeared, looking at the 3 dragon bull cubs, and said, "These 3 little guys were born prematurely. The 3-horned dragon bull tore its abdomen and gave birth to 3 cubs." This. Nietian was stunned, and couldn't speak for a long time. No wonder the 3 little guys in front of him had a bloody smell on them. Why did the mother dragon bull do that? Nietian calmed down a little, and asked in shock. He never thought that the 3-horned dragon bull would tear its abdomen and give birth to 3 cubs. But he did not understand why the Triceratops bull would do this. Among these 3, one of them is abnormal. If it doesn't give birth in advance, it will definitely die, the Fat Cat said in a deep voice as he stared at one of the calves. "It's not normal?" Nietian was stunned for a moment. Then, he looked carefully and finally found the abnormality. Among the 3 little Draco bulls, 2 of them had 3 meatball-like protrusions on top of their heads, which should be 3 small horns. As for the other one, there were 9 meatball-like protrusions on its head. This. Nietian frowned and his expression froze. Triceratops, of course, should have 3 horns. However, one of the little dragon bulls actually had 9 horns. What was going on? "This should be a type of atavistic mutation," said the Fat Cat in a deep voice. However, he didn't want to explain too much. Instead, he looked at Nietian and said, "Nietian, the auras of these 3 little guys are very weak. Help them stabilize their auras first." "Okay." Nietian nodded heavily. Then, he released the power of the vein of the earth and slowly transferred it into the 3 little Draco bulls' bodies. He felt a little guilty about what happened to the mother Draco bull. If he had known that there were 3 calves behind the Triceratops bull, he would never have killed them. But now it was too late to say anything. After a while, the 3 little Draco bulls' auras gradually stabilized and they slowly opened their eyes. The first face they saw was Nietian. The 3 little guys were very lively. They jumped up and down, wanting to pounce on Nietian. Nietian smiled bitterly and said, "Little guys, I'm the one who killed your mother." Hearing Nietian's words, the Fat Cat comforted him. "Nietian, even if you didn't make a move just now, that Triceratops bull would have died for sure. She used her own life in exchange for the lives of her 3 children. This is her own choice. You just need to take good care of the 3 little guys. Don't let down her choice. Nye Tian let out a deep breath and said with a bitter smile, I'll protect the 3 of them. Since the matter had already happened, there was no point in regretting it. Moreover, the situation just now was actually a fight to the death. If Nye Tian's strength was slightly weaker, he would have died in the hands of the Triceratops bull. The Triceratops bull took the initiative to seek death. This was also its own choice. The only thing Nye Tian could do now was to respect its choice. Nye Tian calmed down and said with a plain tone, Little fatty, why don't you take the 3 kids to the 9 supernaturals? The fat cat nodded and brought the 3 little Dracobulls into the 9 extremities. The strength of the 3 horned Dracobulls is really too strong. That mother Dracobull from before was actually able to injure me despite being so heavily injured. It's really terrifying. Recalling the battle just now, Nye Tian couldn't help but frown as he muttered. The combat strength of the Triceratops bull was indeed out of Nye Tian's expectations. Even a heavily injured Triceratops bull was still troublesome for Nye Tian. It was hard to imagine how terrifying a Triceratops bull at its peak would be if it went berserk. And that mutated little Dracobull actually has 9 horns. When it grows up, it will probably be even more terrifying than the average Triceratops bull. Nye Tian suddenly thought of the mutated little Dracobull and couldn't help but smile. The 3 little Dracobulls were just newborn cubs. Who knew how long it would take for them to grow up? Nye Tian shook his head and walked out of the cave. He came to the sea valley and landed on the carcass of the Triceratops bull to retrieve its beast core. Since the Triceratops bull was already dead, the beast core should not be wasted. Nye Tian got ready to leave after getting the beast core of the Triceratops bull. But at this moment, his eyes suddenly narrowed as if he had discovered something. At the same time, a voice came from outside the Dragon Fish Valley. A martial artist pointed at the Dragon Fish Valley and said, It's here. If Nye Tian was here, he would be able to tell with a glance that the martial artist who spoke was Yuan Wei, the hunter from the 4th main city whom he had saved previously. At this moment, Yuan Wei had returned, but he was not alone. There were more than 10 hunters beside him. 2 of them were familiar to Nye Tian. They were Yuan Lai from the 4th main city, and Bai Fengming from the 2nd main city. Yuan Wei, are you sure there's a heavily injured Triceratops bull here? Yuan Lai looked at the Dragon Fish Valley and asked cold. The reason why he was here was that Yuan Wei had told him there was a heavily injured Triceratops bull here. However, he did not sense the aura of the Triceratops bull. Young master, the Triceratops bull is in the Sea Valley. You will know once you go in and take a look, Yuan Wei said with a respectful expression. There's no need to go in and take a look. The Triceratops bull is already dead. At this moment, a voice came from the Sea Valley and a figure stepped out. Chapter 2388. Outside the Dragonfish Valley. Yuan Lai and Bai Fengming were taken aback when they saw the person walking out of the valley was actually Nye Tian. Their expressions turned cold in an instant, and their eyes were filled with unconcealable killing intent. Both of them had lost to Nye Tian before, and they had lost miserably. Therefore, their hatred for Nye Tian was unimaginable. Yuan Wei, why didn't you tell me that he was here? Yuan Lai sneered and said in a deep voice. Yuan Wei chuckled and said, Young master, I wanted to give you a surprise. Of course, he knew about the grudge between Nye Tian and Yuan Lai. He was at the scene the day Nye Tian defeated Yuan Lai with a single slash. The reason why he didn't tell Yuan Lai that he had met Nye Tian was not because he wanted to be surprised. It was because he had been saved by Nye Tian, so he didn't want Yuan Lai to know about it. But now that Nye Tian had appeared, he couldn't hide it anymore. He could only say that it was a surprise. What a surprise! This young master is really surprised. Yuan Lai smiled cold and said, Yuan Wei, I didn't choose the wrong person to be the scout. Thank you for the compliment, young master. Yuan Wei smiled proudly and bowed. He had appeared alone in the Dragonfish Valley to scout, but he had mistakenly entered and almost died in the hands of the three-horned draconic bull. Of course, he knew that the three-horned draconic bull was heavily injured, so he called for Yuan Lai and the others to come and kill it. But now it seemed that they were one step too late. The three-horned draconic bull had already been killed by Nie Tian. So you're a scout. Nie Tian smiled faintly and glanced at Yuan Wei. He said cold, "It seems that I shouldn't have saved you. Even if I did, I shouldn't have let you go. Brat, it's too late to regret now." Yuan Wei smiled mischievously. Then, his eyes slightly trembled as he said, "You killed that Triceratops bull by yourself?" "Humph," Nie Tianling laughed and said, "Do you think I will die in the hands of the Triceratops bull?" Yuan Wei froze for a moment and gulped. Nie Tian's battle prowess was indeed astonishing. A three-horned draconic bull in a berserk state was actually killed by him alone. Even if that three-horned draconic bull was seriously injured, its strength was still very terrifying. He killed a Triceratops bull all by himself. Yuan Lai locked his gaze on Nie Tian and said, "Nie Tian, your battle prowess is indeed amazing. Most people didn't know how terrifying the Triceratops bull was. Under normal circumstances, Triceratops draconic bulls were very docile. They would only go berserk under extreme circumstances. Therefore, the apes didn't know how difficult it was for Nie Tian to survive in front of the Triceratops bull. If I wasn't strong, how could I defeat you with one sword?" Nie Tian smiled lightly and said with a playful face, "Nie Tian, you." Hearing Nie Tian mentioning the past and exposing his scars, Yuan Lai suddenly felt a lump in his chest and couldn't say a word. "Nie Tian, no matter how strong you are alone now." At this time, Bai Fengming, who was standing aside, said coldly, "If you know what's good for you, hand over the beast core of the Triceratops bull. Maybe if I'm in a good mood, I can let you go." After saying that, the murderous intent in Bai Fengming's eyes became extremely intense, as though it would burst out at any moment. "Let me go?" Nie Tian smiled and said coldly, "Bai Fengming, have you forgotten that you were defeated by me with one sword not long ago? With your strength, do you think you are qualified to let me go?" Bai Fengming's strength was a little stronger than Yuan Lai's, but he was defeated by Nie Tian with one sword. At that time, Bai Fengming was seriously injured. It had only been half a day, and no one knew what he did to recover. Maybe the governor of the second main city gave him some kind of recovery elixir, which helped him recover quickly. "Nie Tian, you are too arrogant." Bai Fengming's face darkened and said coldly, "You defeated me before only because I was careless. Now that you are facing so many of us, what are your chances of winning? You are just a bunch of trash. Do I need to care?" Nie Tianling responded coldly. He was very arrogant. "You." Bai Fengming's eyes darkened when he was called trash by Nie Tian. He gritted his teeth and roared like a wild beast, "Go to hell!" Hearing his arrogant voice, Bai Fengming moved directly. He stabbed his sword out, and the sword shadows whistled, pressing down on Nie Tian. QL11 Nie Tian's eyes narrowed, and he also slashed out with his sword, and the sword shadows suddenly appeared. Boom! The two sword shadows directly collided, setting off wild waves in the water, surging with violent sword-intent aura. Nie Tian and Bai Fengming moved back almost at the same time, and then steadied themselves at the same time. "I didn't expect your recovery ability to be so strong. You were seriously injured just now, but you have completely recovered in just half a day." Nie Tian looked at Bai Fengming, frowned, and said in a mocking tone, "My strength is beyond your imagination." Bai Fengming sneered, and then slashed down with his sword again. Nie Tian blocked Bai Fengming's sword, and was forced to move back again. Huh! Seeing the scene in front of him, Yuan Lai couldn't help but be surprised, and he was confused. It seemed that Nie Tian's strength was much weaker than before. He had seen Nie Tian defeat Bai Fengming with one strike with his own eyes. But why was Nie Tian forced to move back by Bai Fengming's 2 strikes? Young master, this kid must have been injured while fighting with the 3-horned Dragon Bull, so his strength has decreased. At this time, Yuan Wei's voice sounded, and he shouted in surprise. That's possible. Yuan Lai's eyes lit up, and then he nodded heavily and laughed. That must be it. He had almost forgotten that Nie Tian had just killed a 3-horned Dragon Bull. The 3-horned Dragon Bull was a 9th-grade sea beast after all, and Nie Tian must have been injured while fighting it. Indeed, Nie Tian had suffered some injuries, but these injuries were not serious, and they did not affect his strength much. Even he himself was surprised that he was forced back by Bai Fengming. This was because he could clearly feel that Bai Fengming's current sword intent was much stronger than before. Nie Tian, what did you discover? Bai Fengming did not pay attention to the words of Yuan Lai and the others. Instead, he smiled coldly and swung his sword again. Nie Tian's brows furrowed, and he swung his sword wildly, and at the same time, his figure retreated. He had finally sensed something with this sword. It seemed that Bai Fengming's sword intent had a special ability that could perfectly fit with the folded space of the water layer, and thus burst out with great power. Nie Tian could feel that Bai Fengming's current sword intent was at least twice as strong as before. Nie Tian, it seems that you have understood a little. Bai Fengming saw that Nie Tian's expression was strange, and he smiled cold and said, however, you won't have the chance to understand completely. I will definitely kill you with my next move. Bai Fengming's voice was as cold as ice. Strange runes surged around his body, and then the aura around him changed. His whole body was shrouded in strange runes, and he stood there like a huge whirlpool, crazily absorbing energy from the water layer. Seeing this, Nie Tian's eyes suddenly narrowed, and he could not hide the surprise in his eyes. Chapter 2389. Nie Tian looked at Bai Fengming and frowned. He did not dare to be careless. Bai Fengming seemed to have released some kind of rune that could absorb energy from the water layer. Nie Tian felt that the runes around Bai Fengming had some kind of devouring attribute. It was very strange. This is a sword seal. At this moment, Fat Cat's voice was heard and she said nervously, Sword seal. Nie Tian was stunned. He had never seen such a strange sword seal. Ordinary sword seals had a strong sword intent aura. However, Bai Fengming's sword seal had a very weak sword intent aura. It was very strange. Nie Tian, his sword seal is a sword seal with devouring attribute, and it also has a weak spacetime attribute. Fat Cat reminded again. Her expression was tense, and she was obviously worried for Nie Tian. Nie Tian's face became a little embarrassed. He did not expect Bai Fengming's sword seal to be so strange. It was a sword seal with devouring attribute, and it also had spacetime attribute. No wonder Nie Tian felt that Bai Fengming's sword intent could perfectly fit with the folded space of the water layer. When he first met Bai Fengming, Nie Tian did not feel any sword intent aura from the latter. At this moment, he finally understood why. At that time, Bai Fengming had hidden all his sword intent in the sword seal in his body. Nie Tian, my next move will take your life. At this moment, the sword seal runes around Bai Fengming's body were extremely violent, and the sword intent in his body was also surging to the extreme. At this moment, even the surrounding water layer was collapsing towards Bai Fengming. It was as if he was the ruler of this world. How could Bai Fengming be so strong? Yuan Lai and the others were completely dumbfounded. Their faces were blank as they exclaimed in their hearts. Yuan Lai had known Bai Fengming for a long time, but he had never known that the latter's strength was so terrifying. He had always thought that Bai Fengming was only a little stronger than him. But now it seemed that Bai Fengming had been hiding his strength all along. If it was not to kill Nie Tian, Bai Fengming would not have revealed his true strength. Nie Tian, this move was originally prepared for Li Juhan, but now it will be used on you. Bai Fengming's aura was extremely violent and became more and more terrifying. He said in a cold voice, "You will not feel wronged to die under this move." Li Zhuhan. Bai Fengming mentioned a name. It turned out that he had hidden his strength so that he could kill Li Zhuhan at the most crucial moment. Bai Fengming was from the second main city, while Li Zhuhan was from the first main city. It seemed that the second main city was not loyal to the first main city. Bai Fengming wanted to kill Li Zhuhan so that the Bai family could rule the first main city. He wanted his father to become the Dark Emperor of the Dark Sea Prison. But now that he had revealed his strength in advance, he did not have to worry so much. At this moment, Bai Fengming had already made up his mind. After he killed Nie Tian, everyone else present must die. Even Yuan Lai, he would kill him with his own hands. His father had always taught him that those who wanted to achieve great things must be cruel and merciless. Since Yuan Lai and the others knew his true strength, they must be sacrificed. But everything he had decided on had to be done first, and that was to kill Nie Tian. QL11. If he could not even kill Nie Tian, how could he kill Yuan Lai and the others? Dark Raven swallows the sun. In the next moment, Bai Fengming roared, and the sword will in his body condensed into a huge black bird. It was the shape of his sword seal, the Dark Raven. The sword seal in his body was called the Dark Raven Sword Seal. It was a powerful sword seal with a terrifying devouring ability. At the same time, it had a strong space-time attribute. In the next moment, the Dark Raven spread its black wings, which were thousands of meters long. It was like a curtain that covered the sky, and it rolled towards Nie Tian. Boom! 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 Suddenly, the water was hit and a terrifying wave was set off. The water within tens of thousands of meters shook violently, as if a tsunami was about to happen. So scary! Yuan Lai and the others felt the terrifying aura of the Dark Raven, and they all retreated with fear in their eyes. At this moment, the strength that Bai Fengming displayed was stronger than many city lords. It was close to the pinnacle of the immortal state. Nie Tian felt the boundless aura pressing down on him, and his expression changed. He did not expect that Bai Fengming had hidden such a terrifying strength. If he had known earlier, he would have killed Bai Fengming when he had the chance. But it was too late to regret now. Facing Bai Fengming's fatal attack, Nie Tian was not afraid. The 9 dragon veins in his body revolved crazily, and majestic dragon chi surged out, and a crimson sea of lightning appeared behind him. Roar! Just as the Dark Raven's shadow was about to crash down, a huge dragon appeared in the sea of lightning, and a violent dragon roar sounded. Nie Tian retreated, and the huge body of the lightning dragon rolled out, breaking through the huge waves and collided with the Dark Raven's shadow. Boom! In the next moment, the Dark Raven's shadow and the huge dragon collided, and a huge force spread out in all directions. Boom! 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 In an instant, an even more terrifying wave rolled out, and it was like a violent gale crazily attacking. At this moment, the folded space was torn apart by the violent force. Everyone could clearly feel that the space was expanding. It was a very strange feeling, as if the martial body was being pulled by a force, and was about to be torn apart in the next moment. Boom! In the next moment, an even more violent sound was heard, and the ear-piercing roar reverberated in the water. The two forces were too terrifying, and neither could destroy the other in an instant. They were in a stalemate. Everyone's eyes trembled as they saw the two huge figures devouring and tearing each other apart, trying to destroy each other. These two people are so scary. Yuan Lai and the others were shocked, and their expressions were completely horrified. Bai Fengming had hidden his strength. At this moment, he completely activated the sword seal in his body, and a destructive force burst out. As for Nie Tian, he had also hidden his strength. At this moment, he released the dragon chi to fight against Bai Fengming head-on. Bai Fengming and Nie Tian were really more terrifying than the other. Yuan Lai only now realized that the gap between him and Nie Tian and Bai Fengming was like heaven and earth. Neither of them had the strength to kill him in an instant. At this moment, he couldn't help but sweat on his forehead when he thought of the battle between him and Nye Tian. If Nye Tian had wanted to, he wouldn't have survived until now. Boom! Bang! Crack, crack, crack. At this moment there was a sudden sound of an explosion, followed by a muffled sound. The terrifying dragon's shadow finally couldn't hold on any longer, and it instantly began to collapse. The majestic dragon Qi collapsed in an instant, and turned into a violent force, wreaking havoc in the water. The terrifying waves surged endlessly, and the entire body of water seemed to be boiling as it tumbled incessantly. It was extremely frightening. Chapter 2390. Nye Tian. The eyes of Yuan Lai and the others trembled. Then, they saw the blood-colored figure flying backward and cried out in shock. Nye Tian's figure was also sent flying the moment the giant dragon's shadow collapsed. Nye Tian was still slightly weaker in a head-on confrontation. His figure was hit by the endless waves like a withered leaf in the wind, about to collapse at any time. Ha ha ha! Bai Fengming's maniacal laughter could be heard amidst the rolling airwaves. He seemed extremely violent as he shouted, "Nye Tian, how dare you fight my dark crow sword seal head-on? You're courting death. I'll let you know who's the weaker one between you and me." His violent voice was insufferably arrogant and ferocious. At this moment, Bai Fengming's eyes suddenly changed, revealing a cold, murderous intent. "Go to hell." In the next second, he roared like a wild beast, and the dark crow's shadow in the water suddenly moved like a falling black mountain, charging toward Nye Tian. "Bai Fengming, you've overestimated yourself." However, at this moment, Nye Tian's figure suddenly stopped. He stood there and said cold, "Boom! Bang!" Just as he finished speaking, the terrifying shadow of the raven trembled, and then it directly collapsed, turning into countless runes that dissipated in the water. Well, Bai Fengming was caught off guard by the sudden change, and she was struck dumb for a second. His dark crow sword seal was clearly suppressing Nye Tian. Why did it collapse at the moment of the fatal blow? This was something that Bai Fengming had never expected. The scene in front of him was beyond his expectation. What exactly did Nye Tian do just now? What's going on? Yuan Lai and the rest were also stunned. They had no idea what was going on. Everyone could see that Bai Fengming had the absolute advantage. But why did that terrifying dark crow shadow collapse in an instant? Nye Tian, what exactly did you do? In the next moment, Bai Fengming roared. His voice was sharp, and it was obvious that he was furious to the extreme. Never in his wildest dreams did he imagine that his dark raven sword seal would be broken by Nye Tian. He had been biding his time for a long time. The dark crow sword seal was his most terrifying trump card. It was prepared to kill Li Juhan. In order to kill Nye Tian, he had used the dark raven sword seal. However, the outcome had greatly exceeded his expectations. Although the dark raven sword seal had severely injured Nye Tian, it had not been able to kill Nye Tian. Instead, it had been broken by Nye Tian. This was something that Bai Fengming could not accept. Bai Fengming, do you think that you're the only one who has the power of time and space? Nye Tianling smiled coldly. His body shook, and the blood stains on his body disappeared. His whole body released a fierce aura. What do you mean? Bai Fengming was stunned at first, but then his eyes trembled. He seemed to have understood something. He said in horror, "That dragon shadow, the flame that was burning just now, is it a kind of power of time and space?" Just now, the dragon shadow that Nye Tian had condensed was burning with the power of a terrible flame. Bai Fengming felt that something was wrong, but he did not care about it. He only thought that the flame was caused by the burning of the dragon energy. However, he now understood that the flame was a kind of power of time and space. Bai Fengming, you're not that stupid after all. Nye Tianling smiled coldly. The corners of his mouth curled into a faint smile. In the fight just now, not only did he use the dragon energy, but he also used the power of the boundary of the universe. One had to admit that Bai Fengming's dark crow sword seal was indeed terrifying. It stretched the folded space directly and exploded with terrifying power. However, it was also because of this that Nie Tian had the opportunity to break the dark crow sword seal. When the Crimson Dragon and the dark crow sword seal were fighting, the boundary of the universe seeped into the dark crow's shadow and destroyed the dark crow sword seal. Therefore, when Bai Fengming used the dark crow sword seal again, the dark crow's shadow could not be maintained, and it collapsed directly. This is impossible. Bai Fengming's eyes suddenly trembled, and he roared in anger. However, the next moment, he thought of something and said in shock, "Don't tell me that the flame that you released is the legendary number 1 demonic fire, the boundary of the universe. Seems like you're smarter than I thought." Nie Tian laughed and said calmly, "The flame just now was indeed the boundary of the universe." "You!" Bai Fengming's eyes trembled, and he roared like a wild beast that was about to go berserk. "How can you have the number 1 demonic fire?" This. On the other hand, Yuan Lai was stunned when he heard Nie Tian's words. He froze on the spot like a piece of wood. This was because he knew that there was another demonic fire in Nie Tian's body. The second demonic fire, the heart of nothingness. The boundary of the universe and the heart of nothingness were known as the dual supreme fires. Nie Tian's body had merged with the dual supreme fires at the same time. Yuan Lai's heart trembled when he thought of this, and he suddenly felt a chill down his spine. He never dreamed that Nie Tian had the dual supreme fires at the same time. "This guy is so scary," Yuan Lai exclaimed in his heart. Bean-sized beads of sweat flowed from his forehead to his cheeks. "Bai Fengming, your dark crow sword seal has been broken. What other strength do you have?" Nie Tianling suddenly spoke, and his eyes were sharp and murderous. "Nie Tian, why are you so arrogant?" Bai Fengming roared and said angrily, "You've been seriously injured by my dark crow sword seal. How much longer can you last? It's enough to kill you." Nie Tianling smiled, and the sword essence in his body surged and surged in the water. It was very terrifying. Bai Fengming frowned when he saw this, and the shock in his heart was written on his face. He never thought that Nie Tian's martial body would be so strong that he could burst out such a terrifying sword essence even when he was seriously injured. At this moment, Nie Tian's eyes were filled with murderous intent, and his whole body was full of murderous intent. "Bai Fengming, prepare to die." In the next moment, Nie Tianling said, and with a movement of his body, he slashed out with the starlight heavenly slash. A giant sword shadow, like a roaring dragon, whizzed toward Bai Fengming. Bai Fengming's eyes narrowed, and he reacted quickly by thrusting his sword forward. Rumble! The two sword shadows collided, but one of the sword shadows directly shattered. Bang! Following this, a muffled sound was heard, and Bai Fengming's figure was sent flying. Before he could stabilize himself, he spurted out a mouthful of blood. Without the dark crow sword seal, Bai Fengming's sword essence was obviously weaker than Nie Tian's. Damn it! Bai Fengming barely stabilized his body, and his eyes were filled with astonishment. He turned around and looked at Yuan Lai and the others and growled, "Yuan Lai, what are you waiting for?" Yuan Lai suddenly reacted, and as if he had just woken up from a dream, he immediately yelled, "Everyone, attack together and kill Nie Tian." Nie Tian turned around, and his icy gaze swept across Yuan Lai and the others and said disdainfully, "You think you can do it?" Yuan Lai's heart turned cold, but he quickly calmed down and said coldly, "Nie Tian, you're seriously injured. I'd like to see how long you can last." "You can try." Nie Tianling laughed, and the murderous intent in his eyes intensified. "Yuan Wei, attack." Yuan Lai frowned his eyebrows. He did not dare to attack himself, so he yelled at Yuan Wei. Yuan Wei was stunned for a moment, and his face turned pale when he sensed the anger in Yuan Lai's eyes. Chapter 2391. When Nye Tian's gaze locked onto Yuan Wei, he felt like he was suffocating. His face turned as white as a sheet, and he couldn't even breathe properly. "What are you just standing there for, Yuan Wei?" Yuan Lai shouted. "What are you waiting for? Attack?" Nye Tianling said, chuckling. "He won't get a chance to." As his cold voice faded, his figure moved, and the starlight heaven slashed down. A sword shadow shot out like a bolt of lightning, swift to the extreme, fierce and murderous. Bam! A muffled boom rang out, and Yuan Wei was completely engulfed by the sword. He didn't even have a chance to scream. He was still in a state of shock when Nye Tian struck out with his sword. "What?" The others were all astonished by what they saw, and they all gasped in shock. Nye Tian was simply too terrifying. Despite being seriously injured, he had killed Yuan Wei, who was a peak paramount god, as easily as slaughtering a chicken or a sheep. Attack together! Kill him! Right at this moment, Yuan Lai seemed to have gone mad as he roared furiously. The dozen or so hunters immediately reacted. After calming down a bit, they moved to surround Nye Tian. "Since you people have a death wish, I'll fulfill your wish," Nye Tian said, his gaze as vicious as a wolf's. Facing a dozen peak paramount gods, he wasn't afraid, but rather filled with the desire to do battle. "Kill him!" In the next moment, more than a dozen hunters roared in unison and launched attacks at the same time. More than a dozen violent attacks bombarded Nye Tian from all directions. Nye Tian wasn't the least bit afraid. Summoning boundless astral power, he formed an astral soul shield, and then slashed his sword toward one of the hunters. Agith! The hunter that Nye Tian had locked onto let out a miserable shriek, then died a miserable death. Bam! 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 At the same time, Nye Tian also suffered the attacks of the others. The astral soul shield around his body couldn't withstand the attacks and shattered. Nye Tian was seriously injured when he exchanged blows with Bai Fengming just now. Especially his 9 dragon veins, which were already full of cracks. Needless to say, Bai Fengming's dark crow sword seal was indeed terrifying. If it weren't for the fact that Nye Tian's martial body was abnormally strong, he would have been a corpse by now. Now that he was facing the combined attacks of a dozen peak paramount gods, he could only rely on the power of the stars. His figure retreated continuously, blood seeping out from the corner of his mouth, but his eyes were still fierce and stern. "He's dying, quickly kill him!" Bai Fengming and Yuan Lai shouted in unison as they felt Nye Tian's breath becoming unstable. More than a dozen hunters attacked at the same time. Endless violent attacks were like a violent storm as they attacked Nye Tian. "Bring it on, you pieces of trash!" Nye Tian wasn't the least bit afraid. His eyes were filled with killing intent, and his blood energy surged. His power of the stars surged as he slashed out with his sword again, killing another hunter. However, at the same time, he suffered more than a dozen attacks. Puff! His body trembled, and he coughed up a mouthful of foul blood. Just then, Bai Fengming and Yuan Lai, who had been waiting for an opportunity, suddenly moved at the same time. "Now's my chance!" Boom! Boom! A deadly sword shadow and a blazing fire dragon appeared in the water at the same time, both of them shooting toward Nye Tian. Bai Fengming and Yuan Lai both hated Nye Tian to the bone. Now that they attacked, they didn't have the slightest misgivings. They wanted to kill him in a single strike. Their eyes shone brightly, as if they could already see the scene of Nye Tian being killed. Their eyes were blazing because they both wanted to benefit from Nye Tian. Bai Fengming wanted Nye Tian's universe boundary, while Yuan Lai wanted Nye Tian's heart of nothingness. Given Nye Tian's current state, if he were to face their ultimate attacks head-on, even if he didn't die, he would be seriously injured or disabled. Nye Tian. At the critical moment of life and death, a clear voice sounded. "Jun Ouching." Nye Tian's eyes trembled, and then he felt a space-time sword shadow appear behind him. He smiled, took a step back, and disappeared in the space-time sword shadow. Boom! The moment his figure disappeared, the sword shadow and the fire dragon collided, creating a terrifying impact. Huh! Bai Fengming and Yuan Lai were stunned by the scene in front of them and exclaimed at the same time. At that moment, Nie Tian's figure appeared again, but this time, he was thousands of meters away. A beautiful figure stood beside Nie Tian. It was Jun Aoqing. Nie Tian, are you alright? Jun Aoqing asked anxiously when she saw that Nie Tian was heavily injured. I won't die for now, Nie Tian said with a wry smile. Fortunately, Jun Aoqing came in time, or the consequences would have been unimaginable. Lord Nie Tian, Yang Qi and the others also appeared, and they were shocked to see Nie Tian injured. They had been waiting for Nie Tian outside the Fish Dragon Valley, and although they heard the sounds of fighting, they didn't come over. Jun Aoqing couldn't help but come over to check, and she happened to save Nie Tian. QL11 Bai Fengming spun around, and when he saw Jun Aoqing, he couldn't help but exclaim, a space-time swordswoman. He hadn't expected to run into a space-time swordswoman here. Jun Aoqing took a step forward and looked coldly at Bai Fengming. Are you the one who injured Nie Tian? So what if I am? Bai Fengming said with a cold chuckle, as if he didn't care about Jun Aoqing at all. Yes, Jun Aoqing said, her beautiful eyes glittering with Jun Aoqing's. You will die. Humph. Bai Fengming sneered in contempt. Although Jun Aoqing was a space-time swordswoman, she was only a late paramount god. Bai Fengming didn't believe that Jun Aoqing was strong enough to kill him. You think you can kill me? The corner of Bai Fengming's mouth twitched with contempt and she said coldly, You're crazy, however. Before he could finish his sentence, a strange scene occurred. Jun Aoqing blurred into motion and vanished. Swoosh. In the next instant, a sword shadow suddenly appeared like a ghost and directly attacked Bai Fengming. Bai Fengming didn't get a chance to finish his sentence. He was swallowed up by the sword shadow, and he didn't even have time to scream. The moment Bai Fengming was swallowed up by the sword shadow, a beautiful figure appeared. It was none other than Jun Aoqing. Dead silence. The scene fell into a deathly stillness. This sudden scene was something that no one had expected. Everyone's eyes widened in shock, and they all turned into wooden statues. One sword strike. One sword strike, and Jun Aoqing had killed Bai Fengming. Bai Fengming was ranked third among the Dark C9 demons, and yet Jun Aoqing had killed him with a single sword strike. Bai Fengming didn't even know how he had died. How could he have imagined that Jun Aoqing's space-time sword intent was so strong that it could break through folded space? Yuan Lai and the others were so shocked that their mouths were wide open, but no sound came out. It turned out that Nie Tian wasn't the only freak in the 7th major city. Chapter 2392. Hiss. After a long time, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. There was finally some reaction. Yang Qi and the others' expressions were still stiff as they looked at Jun Aoqing in shock. Only at that moment did he realize that Nie Tian's 6-man squad was made up of monstrous existences. First, Nie Tian had defeated Yuan Lai and the others with a single strike. Then, Nie Tian and Lai Yin Jiufeng had joined forces to kill the Wolf Shark Emperor. But now, Jun Aoqing had killed Bai Fengming with a single strike. It had to be said that this was the most shocking scene Yang Qi had ever seen. It was even more shocking than when Nie Tian and Lai Yin Jiufeng had revealed their strength. The space-time swordsman is truly terrifying. Nie Tian looked at Jun Aoqing and shook his head with a bitter smile. Jun Aoqing's attack was truly frightening. An invisible and traceless sword strike, an attack that came without any warning, this was something that no one could avoid. Those who knew Jun Aoqing could activate their defenses in advance. Those who fought Jun Aoqing for the first time would definitely die if they were careless in the slightest. One had to know that even someone like Lai Yin Jiufeng had almost died at Jun Aoqing's hands. Nie Tian had fought Lai Yin Jiufeng many times, but he had never forced the latter into a dead end. Bai Fengming's death was partly because he had just fought with Nie Tian and suffered some injuries, but it was also because of his carelessness and Jun Aoqing's terrifying strength. Nie Tian had not expected Jun Aoqing's sword intent to be this terrifying. It could even break through folded space and time. Bai Fengming, the ambitious guy, had never dreamed that he would die because of his carelessness. He had planned to kill Li Juhun during the hunt in the Dark Sea. But he hadn't expected that he would die so tragically before he could even see Li Juhun. After killing Bai Fengming, Jun Aoqing's beautiful eyes narrowed as she said cold, "Are you guys still not going to get lost?" "Scram, we'll scram right now." Yuan Lai and the others suddenly reacted. They shouted in alarm and instantly scattered in all directions. Upon seeing this, Nie Tian shook his head and smiled. Jun Aoqing was still soft-hearted and didn't want to kill everyone. Since Jun Aoqing didn't want to make a move, Nie Tian wouldn't force her. In his current state, he was severely injured, so he could only watch as Yuan Lai and the others left. "Nie Tian, how are you?" Seeing that Yuan Lai and the others had left, Jun Aoqing's figure flashed and came to Nie Tian's side as she nervously asked. "I'm fine. I just need to rest for a while." Nie Tian smiled and nodded. The battle with Bai Fengming had seriously injured his 9 dragon veins. However, he had the earth vein source in his body. As long as he was given some time to rest, the damaged dragon veins would quickly recover. "Lord Nie Tian, what happened here?" Yang Qi looked at Nie Tian and asked with a puzzled expression. Nie Tian smiled faintly and briefly explained what had happened with the Triceratops bull. So it was a calving Triceratops bull. Someone must have threatened its calves. That's why it went berserk. Yang Qi frowned and guessed. Nie Tian nodded and said, "The Dragonfish Valley just had a big battle. No one will come for a while. Let's rest in the valley." Yang Qi nodded vigorously and said, "All right." He would follow any of Nie Tian's orders. Everyone entered the valley and found a suitable place to rest. After half a day, Nie Tian stood up again. The dragon veins in his body had mostly recovered. "Lord Nie Tian, your aura has recovered." Yang Qi came to Nie Tian's side and exclaimed in shock. He could not believe that Nie Tian's recovery ability was so abnormal. Nie Tian had been seriously injured before, but he had recovered in just half a day. It was terrifying. "Let's leave this place." Nie Tian smiled faintly and did not say anything else. His strength had recovered. There was no point in staying here any longer. Everyone stood up and prepared to leave the Dragonfish Valley. "Someone's coming." But at this time, Jun Aoqing frowned and said nervously. Nie Tian narrowed his eyes and used his divine sense to scan the surroundings. As expected, there were a few figures walking towards the Dragonfish Valley. "Don't worry about them," Nie Tian said indifferently, and then left with the others. When they reached the entrance of the valley, they met a few hunters walking towards them. Nie Tian ignored them and left on his own. Face grim, one of the hunters glanced over Nie Tian. Suddenly, his eyes flickered and he said coldly, "Wait!" Nie Tian was stunned. He frowned and asked, "What's the matter?" "Nothing." The man snickered and looked at Nie Tian with disdain. "I just don't like you." The corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched as he asked coldly, "What do you want?" He did not expect that the man would stick his face out for him to slap when he ignored him. Yang Qi and the rest were stunned and their expressions changed. They wanted to laugh but did not dare to. This guy was courting death by provoking Nie Tian. "Do you know who I am?" That person was extremely arrogant. With a condescending attitude, he coldly asked. "I don't know and I'm not interested," Nie Tian said with a playful smile. "My name is Li Dian and I'm from the First City." Li Dian raised his eyebrows and emphasized the words First City. "So what?" Nie Tian asked coldly, his face expressionless. "Boy, I'm telling you, I'm from the First City. Don't you know what to do?" Li Dian looked at Nie Tian with disdain, as if he was looking at an idiot. Nie Tian chuckled and said, I really don't know what to do. Can you teach me? Are you an idiot? Li Dian was angry and said cold, I'm from the first city. You have to hand over everything you have. Why? Nie Tian curled his lips and pretended that he didn't understand. Because I'm from the first city. Li Dian was really angry this time. He thought he had met an idiot. QL 11-inch humph. Nie Tianling laughed and stared at Li Dian cold. He said, I didn't hear you clearly. Can you say it again? You motherf asterisk cur. Li Dian was completely infuriated and shouted. But before he could finish, he was interrupted. Slap. Suddenly, a crisp sound of a slap rang out. Li Dian felt half of his face burning, as if it was being roasted by fire. You! He looked at Nie Tian in surprise. Slap. 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 However, what he heard next was a series of slaps on his face. In the blink of an eye, dozens of slaps fell and half of Li Dian's face was badly mutilated. He couldn't fight back at all in front of Nie Tian. He didn't even see how Nie Tian hit him. Now you know who's the idiot? Nie Tian stopped and looked at Li Dian with a gloomy face. I am an idiot. Li Dian's eyes were shaking and his teeth were chattering. Chapter 2393. Li Dian looked at Nie Tian with trembling eyes. He became even more frightened when he heard Nie Tian mention Li Juhan. He did not know why Nie Tian suddenly wanted to know about Li Juhan. He originally thought that Nie Tian would obediently hand over everything if he showed his identity as a hunter of the first main city. Who would have thought that he would be greeted with a series of slaps? It seemed that Nie Tian did not care about the first main city at all. Did I ask you a question? Didn't you hear me? Nie Tian's eyes darkened, and the coldness in his eyes intensified. Li Dian's eyes trembled. He felt as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. His eyes trembled as he nodded cautiously and said, I know. Nie Tian did not want to talk nonsense and spat out one word coldly. In the Broken Spirit Valley. Li Dian's voice trembled so much that he could not even finish his sentence. Get lost. Nie Tian's mouth twitched as he growled. Upon hearing Nie Tian's order, Li Dian felt as if he had been pardoned from a grave sin, and dashed out without looking back. The others hurried to catch up. They did not even have the courage to look back at Nie Tian. Nie Tian did not care about Li Dian and the others at all. They were just a group of small fries. It was useless to kill them. Lord Nie Tian, you're not asking about Li Juhan because you want to find him, are you? Yang Qi came over and asked with trembling eyes. Since I have nothing to do now, there's no harm in looking for Li Juhan. Nie Tian nodded and said with a faint smile. Yang Qi frowned and said with an embarrassed expression, Lord Nie Tian, Li Juhan is not an ordinary person. Should we not provoke him? Li Juhan's name in the Dark Sea prison could be said to make people tremble with fear. In the Dark Sea hunt, Li Juhan was the opponent that Yang Qi did not want to meet the most. Now that Nie Tian wanted to look for Li Juhan, how could Yang Qi not panic? Yang Qi thought that Nie Tian had gone to find Li Juhan because of Lai Yin Jiufeng. Lai Yin Jiufeng had gone to find Li Juhan, and as his companion, Nie Tian could not just stand by and watch. His conjecture wasn't wrong, but it wasn't right either. It could only be said that he was half right and half wrong. Lai Yin Jiufeng was indeed the reason why Nie Tian had sought out Li Juhan on his own initiative. But the most important thing was that he wanted to find Li Juhan. Li Juhan had set his eyes on Nie Tian even before the Dark Sea hunt had begun. In fact, he had even attacked him. If not for Lai Yin Jiufeng's interference, Nie Tian and Li Juhan would have already started fighting. Nie Tian and the others had been attacked by a pack of wolf sharks after the Dark Sea hunt had begun. And Li Juhan had also been involved in this. Li Juhan had tried to kill Nie Tian twice in a short time. It was normal for Nie Tian to want to find this person. Lord Nie Tian, the Soul Break Valley is in the deepest part of the Dark Sea. It is one of the most dangerous places in the Dark Sea. Are we really going? Yang Qi asked with a frown. Nie Tian nodded and said indifferently, Commander Yang, you can choose to go with me, or you can choose to leave. I won't force you. Yang Qi's eyes trembled slightly when he heard Nie Tian's words. He was clearly hesitating. He knew that Nie Tian going to find Li Juhun was definitely a dangerous path. And, if he left Nie Tian, although it would also be dangerous, he could at least preserve his life as long as he stayed in the shallow waters and quietly spent the next 9 days. Lord Nie Tian, I'll go with you. But Yang Qi's eyes were fixed in the next moment. He said, Lord Nie Tian saved me. My life was given by Lord Nie Tian. I, Yang Qi, am willing to go with Lord Nie Tian no matter what. Nie Tian smiled faintly. He looked at the other two and asked, What about you? Their eyes flickered. They hesitated for a long time before they finally said, Lord Nie Tian, we won't go. We'll die if we go to a place like the Soulbreak Valley. All right. Nie Tian nodded. He didn't try to hide anything. He said, You two stay in the shallow waters. I don't expect you to kill the sea beasts. Just make sure you don't die. We understand. The two of them nodded. Then, they moved at the same time and headed towards the shallow waters. The two were very self-aware. They knew that killing the sea beasts was Nie Tian's job. Although they were hunters, they were only there to make up the numbers. They would be lucky if they could keep their lives. Let's go, Commander Yang, Nie Tian said with a faint smile, gesturing for Yang Qi to lead the way. Yang Qi blurred into action and led Nie Tian and the others deeper into the depths of the sea. Commander Yang, you mentioned earlier that the Soulbreak Valley is a dangerous place. What is that? On the way, Nie Tian frowned and asked. Lord Nie Tian, there is something you don't know. Hearing Nie Tian ask about the Soulbreak Valley, Yang Qi couldn't help but sigh. The Soulbreak Valley is located in the deepest part of the Dark Sea. Legend has it that the Soulbreak Valley is a bottomless abyss. At the bottom of the abyss lies a mysterious 9th-rank sea beast. The strangest thing is that after a certain period of time, the Soulbreak Valley will emit a terrifying soul-breaking energy. The soul-breaking energy is extremely terrifying. Once released, everyone who enters the Soulbreak Valley will be killed. Therefore, the Soulbreak Valley has always been a forbidden place. Ordinary people don't dare to enter. At this point, Yang Qi's eyes suddenly trembled as if he had thought of something. He said in astonishment, Lord Nie Tian, that guy called Li Dian must have lied to us. He wanted to lure us to the Soulbreak Valley on purpose, so that we would die there. Yes, that must be it. Suddenly thinking of this, Yang Qi felt that it was more likely. In the end, he said resolutely. However, Nie Tian laughed and said, Commander Yang, you overestimate Li Dian. Would he dare to lie under such circumstances? Yang Qi was stunned for a moment. He suddenly felt that Nie Tian's words made sense. Commander Yang, don't guess blindly. Whether Li Juhun is in the Soulbreak Valley or not, we will know once we go there. Nie Tian smiled faintly. His expression was calm. According to Yang Qi, the Soulbreak Valley was indeed a dangerous place, especially the soul-breaking energy. It sounded very strange. Nie Tian really wanted to see what kind of power this soul-breaking energy was. QL11 moreover, he felt that Li Juhun must have entered the Soulbreak Valley with a purpose. He had a feeling that there must be a big secret hidden in the Soulbreak Valley. Afterwards, Nie Tian and the others sank deeper and deeper. The water pressure around them grew stronger and stronger. Finally, Nie Qingwan could not bear it anymore and entered the 9 extremities. At this time, only Jun Aoqing and Yang Qi were left by Nie Tian's side. After a while, a dark and gloomy sea appeared in front of the three. Lord Nie Tian, the entrance to the Soulbreak Valley is just ahead. Yang Qi stopped and said as he looked at the sea in front of them. Let's go in. Nie Tian smiled faintly and prepared to enter without any hesitation. Nie Tian. But at this time, a familiar voice rang in Nie Tian's ears. Lai Yen Jiufeng. Nie Tian's eyes focused and he suddenly turned around. Indeed, he saw a familiar figure in the distant sea. It was Lai Yin Jiufeng. Lai Yin Jiufeng was here. It seemed that Li Zhuhan was here too. At this time, Lai Yin Jiufeng's figure appeared. He wore a strange smile on his face and said, Nie Tian, you came after all. Nie Tian smiled faintly and replied, You didn't want me to come? Chapter 2394. Nie Tian couldn't help but frown when he saw Lai Yin Jiufeng's mysterious expression. He asked, Do you know what is inside Soul Break Valley? Previously, Nie Tian had guessed that there might be some unspeakable secrets hidden in the Soul Break Valley. Otherwise, Li Zhuhan would not have taken the risk to come to Soul Break Valley. Now, Lai Yin Jiufeng's words confirmed his guess. There is an extremely fatal thing hidden inside Soul Break Valley. Lai Yin Jiufeng laughed and said, A greeting from the darkness. A greeting from the darkness? Nie Tian's eyes focused. He was not in the mood to play riddles with Lai Yin Jiufeng. He said directly, Lai Yin Jiufeng, just tell me what is inside Soul Break Valley. Lai Yin Jiufeng still had a strange smile on his face. He looked at Nie Tian with burning eyes and said, There is a giant hand inside Soul Break Valley. It is called the Hand of Darkness. Lai Yin Jiufeng said the last 4 words very carefully. At the same time, he looked at Nie Tian as if he wanted to read something from the latter's reaction. The Hand of Darkness. Nie Tian's pupils abruptly shrank when he heard these 4 words. He exclaimed in his mind. He was far too familiar with this name. However, he was not sure if the Hand of Darkness Lai Yin Jiufeng spoke of was the same thing he was thinking of. Nie Tian, the Hand of Darkness I speak of is what you think it is. Lai Yin Jiufeng smiled faintly when he saw Nie Tian's reaction. Nie Tian was surprised for a moment. Then, he smiled and said, You know what I'm thinking? Of course I do. Lai Yin Jiufeng smiled faintly and said, The origin of darkness. Nie Tian's expression suddenly changed. He could not hide the shock in his heart. He said in shock, The Hand of Darkness you speak of is really the origin of darkness? You will know if it is or not if you sense it carefully. Lai Yin Jiufeng laughed and then moved toward Soul Break Valley. Without any hesitation, Nie Tian followed after them. As he approached the Soul Break Valley, he sensed that the surrounding space was filled with a dark aura that was not considered strong. This aura wasn't strong, but it caused the heart of darkness in Nie Tian's body to have an abnormal reaction. It seemed to be slowly becoming restless. It felt as if there was a sleeping beast in his body that was slowly waking up. Is it really the Hand of Darkness? Nie Tian suppressed his shock and frowned slightly. He didn't expect to meet the legendary Hand of Darkness here. It was no wonder Lai Yin Jiufeng had called it a greeting from the darkness. Nie Tian had already fused with the Heart of Darkness. And Dark Soul was also in his hands. If he could get his hands on the Hand of Darkness, then he would have all the Darkness 3 bodies of the Darkness origin source. Thinking of this, Nie Tian's eyes trembled, and his heart was inexplicably excited. It is indeed the Hand of Darkness. At this time, Fat Cat's voice rang out. Her expression was a little ugly as she said, Moreover, it is the Hand of Darkness that is close to a berserk state. A berserk state? Nie Tian was stunned. He was a little confused. Fat Cat said seriously, Nie Tian, there are many things this sovereign has yet to tell you about origin energy. Since we have encountered the Hand of Darkness in a berserk state, this sovereign will tell you some things. Nie Tian furrowed his brows. He had rarely seen Little Fat Cat with such a serious expression. Little Fat Cat nodded and continued. The origin force has 5 states. They are compressed state, converged state, extended state, berserk state, extreme state. Nie Tian nodded slightly and memorized the 5 states. Little Fat Cat paused for a moment before continuing. Normally, origin energy will be in a state of compression or convergence when there's no outside interference. The compressed and converged states of origin energy are the safest. Even for origin energy such as thunder origin energy and darkness origin energy, As long as they are compressed or converged, they are very safe. But sometimes origin energy will be affected by external forces. When its true power is released, it will turn into an extended state, or even a berserk state. Origin energy in the extended state is already very dangerous. This kind of power is enough to make a peak paramount god martial artist fear. When the origin energy is in a berserk state, even a saint-level expert would avoid it. At this point, Fat Cat paused and did not continue. What about the extreme state? Nie Tian couldn't help but ask with a frown. Suddenly, Fat Cat laughed. After hesitating for a long time, she said, "The extreme state is the most terrifying state of origin energy. It is said that origin energy in its ultimate extreme state can easily destroy a realm." That's so terrifying. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly, and he almost cried out. His understanding of origin energy was still too little. However, at this time, little Fat Cat spoke again. Under normal circumstances, origin force is either in a compressed or converged state. After all, there are not many powers that can affect origin force. Origin energy in the extended state and the berserk state are very rare. As for the extreme state, it is even rarer. It is almost a legend. Hearing Fat Cat's words, Nie Tian couldn't help but let out a deep breath. If origin energy was always in a berserk or extreme state, it would be really troublesome. But then, Nie Tian suddenly thought of something and said, "Fat, you just said that the hand of darkness we are facing now is in a berserk state, right? It is an extended state that is close to the berserk state." Fat Cat smiled strangely and said, "If it is really in a berserk state, even if you get close to it now, you might be directly devoured." Nie Tian's heart sank, and he sucked in a breath of cold air. The most terrifying thing about the darkness origin energy was its devouring power. He didn't expect that the berserk state of the hand of darkness would be so strong. Fortunately, the hand of darkness they were facing was only in an extended state, and not in a berserk state. "Nie Tian, do you want to enter the Valley of Death?" Fat Cat suddenly asked. "Yes." Nie Tian nodded. QL11 he wanted to enter the Valley of Death, because Li Juhun was in the valley. On the other hand, it was because he had an idea about the Hand of Darkness. If he could get his hands on the Hand of Darkness, he would be able to fuse with the body of darkness, and then fuse with the complete origin energy of darkness. Nie Tian urgently wanted to increase his strength. If he could fuse with the complete origin energy of darkness, he believed that his strength would soar by leaps and bounds, a qualitative leap. But at this time, Fat Cat's expression was not very good. He could obviously see what Nie Tian was thinking. But the Hand of Darkness was in an extended state, and entering the Valley of Death would be a great danger to anyone. Especially since Nie Tian's body had fused with the Heart of Darkness. Chapter 2395. Fat Cat's expression turned a lot more serious when he thought of the possible danger. He knew that Nie Tian liked challenges and did not fear any danger. However, the origin-devouring power released by the origin sense was no joke. "What are you worried about, Fat?" Nie Tian asked with a frown when he saw that Fat Cat's expression wasn't right. Fat Cat told him what he was worried about. In the end, he said, "Nie Tian, you must have felt it already. The Heart of Darkness in your body is a little restless. This is the sign of the origin reaction. Right now, you are just outside Soul Break Valley. Once you enter Soul Break Valley, the origin reaction will become even more obvious. In a situation like this, the Heart of Darkness in your body will go out of control if you're the slightest bit careless. When that happens, I'm afraid that even your demon god origin embryo won't be able to do anything." Fat Cat's expression grew even more worried. "Fat, do you have a way to suppress the origin reaction?" Nie Tian asked after a long time with a frown. Fat Cat shook his head and said, "This sovereign doesn't know much about origin energy. I don't know how to suppress the origin reaction." Nie Tian's expression stiffened when he heard Fat Cat's words. He fell silent for a moment. "Nye Tian, are you worried about the origin reaction?" It was at this moment Lai Yin Jiufeng suddenly laughed and asked indifferently. Nye Tian's eyes trembled slightly in surprise. It seemed that Lai Yin Jiufeng knew a lot more than he imagined. "Don't worry, I can suppress the origin reaction for you." Then, Lai Yin Jiufeng smiled strangely and said confidently, "You?" Nye Tian's eyes focused, and the corner of his lips twitched involuntarily. He didn't doubt Lai Yin Jiufeng's ability, but he doubted his motives. Would Lai Yin Jiufeng be so kind as to suppress the origin reaction for him? "Nye Tian, don't forget that we're here to save 7 kills. Lai Yin Jiufeng saw through Nye Tian's thoughts and said, "I really want to kill you, but I won't let you die before I save 7 kills. Nye Tian abruptly raised his head and stared darkly at Lai Yin Jiufeng. He did not know how much of what the other party said was true and how much was false. Lai Yin Jiufeng suddenly took out a pill and said, "This pill is called the Origin Inhibiting Pill, Nye Tian. Eat it and it will suppress the origin reaction." With these words, he placed the pill in front of Nye Tian. Nye Tian did not consume it immediately. Instead, Lai Yin Jiufeng Tian's eyes. Lai Yin inhibiting Ju said. Lai Yin Jiufeng smiled faintly and said, "If you're worried, you can let the kitten take a look." Nye Tian stilled. Lai Yin Jiufeng's reminder seemed to be trying to hide something. But he didn't hesitate and let Fat Cat take a look. Fat Cat frowned in confusion after sensing the origin inhibiting pill. "Fat, is there a problem with the origin inhibiting pill?" Nye Tian asked when he saw Fat Cat's reaction. Fat Cat shook her head and said, "This noble one can't sense anything, but this guy gave you the origin inhibiting pill of his own volition. He clearly prepared it beforehand. You must be on your guard." Nye Tian smiled bitterly. He looked at the origin inhibiting pill in his hand and swallowed it without hesitation. Lai Yin Jiufeng's lips twitched slightly when he saw Nye Tian swallow the origin inhibiting pill. He revealed a careless smile. He hadn't expected Nye Tian to swallow the origin inhibiting pill so straightforwardly. He had assumed that Nye Tian would keep the Yuan restraining pill for himself, and only take it when he couldn't suppress his origin perception after entering Soul Death Valley. "Lai Yin Jiufeng, you seem to be very familiar with this place. You prepared this origin inhibiting pill a long time ago to use it on me, right?" Nye Tian smiled and said to Lai Yin Jiufeng. Lai Yin Jiufeng was not hypocritical. He nodded and said, "Since I've come to Dark Sea Black Prison to save someone, there are some things I need to clarify. Soul Break Valley is a place I must come to. I just didn't think that idiot Li Juhan would come to Soul Break Valley. However, I now know why he came to the Soul Break Valley." Nye Tian's eyes focused and he asked, "You know why Li Juhan came to Soul Break Valley?" Lai Yin Jiufeng laughed and said, "If I'm not mistaken, Li Juhan also came for the Hand of Darkness." Nye Tian stilled and said, "Does Li Juhan want to merge with the Hand of Darkness? Why not?" Lai Yin Jiufeng smiled strangely and said, "But he wants to merge with the Hand of Darkness for another reason." "What reason?" Nye Tian asked. "To steal all of 7 kills power." Lai Yin Jiufeng's expression darkened and he said coldly, "What do you mean?" Nye Tian did not understand. But Lai Yin Jiufeng only smiled strangely and did not explain much. Nye Tian frowned and couldn't help but look worried. Looking at Lai Yin Jiufeng's current expression, it seemed that everything was under his control. QL11 Nye Tian seemed to have become Lai Yin Jiufeng's chess piece. The reason Nye Tian consumed the origin inhibiting pill was because he desired the Hand of Darkness. He knew that the origin inhibiting pill might be Lai Yin Jiufeng's scheme, but he was willing to take the risk to obtain the Hand of Darkness. Moreover, he had his own trump card, the Soul of Darkness. Lai Yin Jiufeng definitely did not know that Nye Tian had not only merged with the Heart of Darkness, but he also had the Soul of Darkness. Then, the group headed straight for Soul Break Valley without any hesitation. The moment he stepped into the Soul Death Valley, Nie Tian sensed with great clarity that the dark aura in the surroundings had become much stronger. It was as if there was an invisible hand slowly tightening in the valley. Everyone felt a sense of oppression, making it hard for them to breathe. Nie Tian and Lian Jiufeng walked at the front, Jun Aoqing and Yang Qi behind Nie Tian, and Nangong Lin and Xianyuan Yunsong behind Lian Jiufeng. The six of them slowly walked forward, careful with every step. They did not dare to be careless. Soul Break Valley was just a valley, but it was extremely wide. There were underwater caves everywhere, and they looked like giant beasts with their mouths wide open. A moment later, Nie Tian and the others arrived at a cave. He discovered that there were dozens of corpses scattered all over the cave. The smell of blood in the cave was very strong. It meant that these corpses had died not long ago. These are all hunters. Why are they here? Nie Tian frowned, a puzzled look on his face. Most hunters would only go to ordinary valleys to hunt. There was no need for them to come to Soul Break Valley. These people were forced here by Li Juhun, Lian Jiufeng said with a smile. He had been following Li Juhun all this time, and had seen the latter gather many hunters to accompany him to Soul Break Valley. Anyone who did not listen to Li Juhun was killed. The people who followed Li Juhun to Soul Break Valley did not have a good ending either. Nie Tian frowned. Li Juhun's methods were really cruel. Let's go. Lian Jiufeng was not in the mood to waste time here. He said indifferently and prepared to leave. However, at this moment, a strange scene occurred. Chapter 2396. What's going on? Everyone was shocked by the sudden turn of events. Yang Qi even cried out in shock. The corpses on the ground had clearly been dead for a long time. How could they suddenly come back to life? Everyone, watch out! Nie Tian suddenly felt the violent aura of the corpses, and the aura was extremely strong. He hurriedly shouted, "Ugh!" Just as he finished speaking, one of the soul hunter's corpses suddenly let out a strange cry, and then its body moved like a beast, rushing toward Jun Aoqing. Jun Aoqing reacted quickly. She turned around and slashed at the corpse. Bang! The sword landed, and there was a dull thud. The soul hunter was sent flying, but his body was completely unharmed. In fact, he was not even injured. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed when he saw this. He knew very well how powerful Jun Aoqing's sword was. However, the corpse that had come back to life was completely unharmed. It was simply too strange. Ugh! 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 In the next moment, more soul hunters' corpses let out low growls and pounced over like zombies. These soul hunters' corpses were extremely fast, and their corpses were extremely strong. They were even stronger than the bodies of rank 9 sea beasts. Their auras were extremely violent. Everyone moved in unison, dodging and attacking at the same time. Nie Tian swung his sword and sent several soul hunters' corpses flying. At the same time, he retreated to the entrance of the cave. However, just as he arrived at the entrance of the cave, he suddenly sensed something and turned around. The scene that greeted him made him suck in a breath of cold air. In the water, countless figures charged toward them like arrows released from a bow. These figures were the same as the soul hunters' corpses in the cave. They were all zombies that had come back to life. The others also arrived at the entrance of the cave. Their expressions were extremely shocked when they saw the scene outside. What are these things? Nangong Lin growled. He could not help but sound a little nervous. Nie Tian and Lian Jiufeng's nerves were stretched taut, and their expressions were ugly. Nie Tian, these are puppet corpses controlled by the soul-extinguishing energy. Fat Cat's voice suddenly rang in Nie Tian's consciousness. Soul-extinguishing energy? Nie Tian was stunned. Then, he immediately recalled something. Yang Qi had said before that the Soul Break Valley would release the Soul Break Qi after a certain period of time. At that time, anyone who entered the Soul Break Valley would be killed. Clearly, Nie Tian and the others had come at the wrong time. Soul-extinguishing energy was being released in soul-extinguishing energy. Nie Tian did not understand what kind of power this soul-severing qi was. It could actually control a cultivator's corpse. The soul-breaking chi is a type of dark energy released by the Hand of Darkness when it is in a berserk state. It is extremely strange, and can control the corpses of cultivators. Little Fat Cat's eyes flashed as it explained nervously. Berserk state? Nia Tian was taken aback. Didn't you say that the Hand of Darkness is in an extended state? It was extended before, but now it's berserk. Fat Cat's eyes flashed. The Hand of Soul Hands extended seems to have been stimulated by some external force. Their aura is growing more and more berserk. This. Nia Tian sucked in a breath of cold air, and his face stiffened slightly. You. As the corpse puppets approached, a low roar resounded from the water. It sounded like the wailing of 10,000 ghosts. Damn it! Nia Tian's eyes darkened when he saw the scene of 10,000 ghosts breaking their souls. He hadn't expected to fall into such danger as soon as he arrived at Soul Extinguishing Valley. In the next moment, the 10,000 ghosts moved in unison. Waves rose from the water and spread toward Nia Tian and the others. Nia Tian frowned and was the first to dash out. Sword intent surged madly from all over his body as he slashed out with his sword. He had to break through the encirclement. It would be terrible if he was trapped in the cave by these corpse puppets. Lian Jiufeng also noticed the danger. He followed closely behind Nia Tian and attacked as well. Boom! Boom! A sword shadow and a terrifying flame, like two heaven-defying dragons, blasted out and charged toward the endless waves. Boom, boom, boom. A terrible explosion resounded from the water when the two terrifying attacks landed. Nia Tian and Lian Jiufeng forced their way out of two paths. Everyone, follow me! Nia Tian growled and was the first to charge. He swung his sword again at the same time. The sword image was like a dragon as it opened a path. The figures of the corpse puppets were sent flying, but none of them were injured. Jun Aoqing and the others followed closely behind. Nia Tian and Lian Jiufeng charged forward, one on the left and one on the right. Bang! 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 Muffled sounds kept coming out from the water layer, and the smell of blood in the air became stronger. In the blink of an eye, Nia Tian and the others finally broke out of the myriad ghost puppets' encirclement. They stood on a giant reef. Let's get out of here! Lian Jiufeng growled without the slightest pause. He moved and headed toward a deeper part of the sea. The others reacted and followed Lian Jiufeng. Nia Tian had Jun Aoqing and the others take the lead while he stayed at the back. Boom! 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 Right at this moment, dozens of corpse puppets suddenly jumped up and attacked at the same time. In an instant, countless terrifying attacks were launched towards Nia Tian and the others. Nia Tian! Jun Aoqing shouted in shock. She sensed that something was wrong. Don't mind me. As Nia Tian let out a bellow, star power madly surged out of him, forming a star soul shield that enveloped everyone within it. QL 11-inch bang, bang, bang. In the next moment, countless attacks landed heavily on the astral soul shield. It only took an instant for the astral soul shield to crack. It looked like it was going to shatter in the next moment. Nia Tian's pupils contracted as he exclaimed inwardly, "These puppets are so strong." The soul-severing aura was too terrifying. Not only could it control the corpses of cultivators, it could even make them use martial skills. Even more frightening was the strength these corpse puppets were displaying right now. They were even stronger than they were when they were alive. With the help of the Star Soul Shield, Nia Tian managed to fend off the first wave of attacks. However, his expression was extremely ugly. He had used up a lot of his astral soul power just now. It was almost impossible for him to block the next wave of attacks. Moreover, he could sense that the aura of the corpse puppets was growing more and more violent. Roar! In the next moment, dozens of corpse puppets charged toward him. Their roars were completely different from before. They were furious roars that were even more violent and bloody. Lian Jiufeng led the way. At the same time, more corpse puppets appeared from all directions in an attempt to stop him. These corpses were all cultivators who had died in Soul Break Valley. They were all revived under the control of the soul-severing aura. Chapter 2397. Li Yinjiufeng was at the very front, but he discovered that more and more corpse puppets were gathering in front of him. They looked like a dark cloud pressing down on them. Nie Tian turned around and took a look. Inwardly, he sucked in a breath of cold air. How many corpse puppets were there? Soul Break Valley was an extremely dangerous place. Normally, it was a deserted place, but over time, many people had died here. But now, it seemed like everyone who had died in Soul Break Valley had come back to life. What is going on here? Li Yinjiufeng roared furiously. He could not hide the anxiety on his face. This is bad. Nie Tian's expression was even uglier than before. In his current state, he could only endure one more wave of corpse puppets' attack. However, he could sense that all the corpse puppets' auras were growing stronger and stronger. They were extremely violent. As more and more corpse puppets appeared, it was impossible for them to break out of the encirclement. Nie Tian, let's go back. It was at this moment Fat Cat's voice suddenly rang. She seemed to have remembered something. Go back where? Nie Tian was stunned. He could not react for a moment. Go back to the cavern. Fat Cat was extremely nervous, but also a little happy. She shouted, the cavern just now was the entrance. Entrance? What entrance? Nie Tian was taken aback and became even more confused. There's no time to explain. You must return to the cavern immediately. That is your only chance of survival, Fat Cat said urgently. She looked extremely panicked. All right. Nie Tian did not ask too many questions. He nodded strongly and shouted, everyone, listen up. We cannot break out of the encirclement. We must return to the cavern. Everyone was stunned. They even wondered if they had heard wrong. They had just risked their lives to escape the cavern, but now they had to go back. Wasn't that just courting death? If we return to the cavern now, Nie Tian, we'll be blocked by the corpse puppets. Jun Aoqing said urgently beside Nie Tian. I know. Nie Tian nodded slightly and said, we must return to the cave now. This is our only chance of survival. Everyone was stunned. They didn't know why Nie Tian would say that. But now that the situation was urgent, Nie Tian really didn't have much time to think too much. It was at this moment Li Yinjiufeng seemed to think of something. His expression changed and he shouted, go back. Follow me closely. Nie Tian nodded solemnly. After which, the sword intent in his body surged to the extreme. At the same time, his blood qi gushed out, surging around his body and stimulating the power within the sword intent. Human sword cutting stars. In the next moment, Nie Tian roared and slashed with his sword. Suddenly, a violent sword will gathered and a majestic sword shadow appeared. It was like a dragon raging in the sea, very scary. Bang! 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 Then, the shadow of the sword shot out like a mountain. Wherever it went, the sword qi burst out. Countless corpses and puppets were blown away in the face of such destructive power, unable to fight back at all. Nie Tian forcefully burned his blood qi and killed a way out. His figure instantly moved, and he rushed toward the cave. The others followed closely behind him. In the blink of an eye, they were back in the cave. QL11 at this time, a large group of corpse puppets appeared, and they spread into the cave like a raging wave. Lord Nie Tian, what do we do? Yang Qi's expression changed when he felt the endless hostility rushing toward him. He asked nervously. Nie Tian, what the hell are you doing? We're trapped in the cave. Are we just going to wait for death? Nangong Ling glared at Nie Tian and roared madly. Shut up. Nie Tian and Li Yinjiufeng looked at Nie Tian cold, at almost the same time. Nangong Ling was stunned. He looked at Li Yinjiufeng in confusion. He didn't know why the latter was angry at him. Nangong Ling, Xianyuan Yunsong, come with me. We'll guard the cave entrance. Lai Yin Jiufeng didn't say anything else. He growled and rushed toward the cave entrance. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. He naturally understood that Lai Yin Jiufeng was buying time for him. Fat, what do we do now? Nie Tian became cold and asked solemnly. Fat Cat's eyes flickered slightly. Nie Tian, all the corpse puppets are gathering toward this cave. This sovereign thinks that this cave is the entrance. Sense carefully. Is there a spatial gate inside the cave? All right. Nie Tian nodded firmly. He didn't say anything else. Then, he unleashed the boundary of the universe. White flames appeared and circulated in the cave like ghosts. He sensed the entrance bit by bit. Meanwhile, at this time, a large number of corpse puppets appeared, surging out, wanting to rush into the cave. Lai Yin Jiufeng led Nangong Ling and Xianyuan Yunsong to guard the entrance. Lai Yin Jiufeng and Nangong Ling worked together. The power of the golden flames and the power of the purple thunder 9 roars could just barely hold on for a while. But they clearly couldn't hold on for too long. Nie Tian had to hurry and find the spatial gate as soon as possible. Nie Tian wasn't sure if there was a spatial gate inside the cave. He could only try his best to sense it. The boundary he unleashed was extremely sensitive to the aura of spacetime. Even Jun Aoqing had to admit that she was inferior to him. However, this kind of sensing method was very taxing on mental energy and time. A moment later, beads of sweat began to appear on Nie Tian's forehead. But he still couldn't find the spatial gate Fat Cat mentioned. Brat, what are you looking for? Are you done or not? Nangong Ling couldn't hold on any longer and shouted. Don't disturb him. Lai Yin Jiufeng roared before Nie Tian could speak. He glared at Nangong Ling cold. Nie Tian needed to focus 100% of his attention. He didn't have the time to pay attention to Nangong Ling. Another dozen or so seconds passed. Lai Yin Jiufeng and the others couldn't hold on any longer. They were all heavily injured. Found it! It was at this time that Nie Tian suddenly noticed something. He cried out and pointed at a stone wall. It's here! Jun Aoqing was taken aback for a moment. She immediately sensed it and her pretty face changed slightly. She sensed that there was a weak space-time aura inside the stone wall. Nie Tian, step back. Jun Aoqing's beautiful eyes narrowed, and she said in a deep voice. Nie Tian understood, and his figure moved, retreating behind Jun Aoqing. There was a spatial gate inside the stone wall. With Nie Tian's strength, it would be very difficult to open it. It was up to Jun Aoqing now. Jun Aoqing took a deep breath, and the sword will began to gather in her body. A terrifying space-time aura appeared, covering her entire body. Break! In the next moment, Jun Aoqing shouted and swung her sword. The stone wall shook slightly, and a ray of light appeared, forming a spatial tunnel. The entrance has appeared. At this moment, little Fat Cat cried out in surprise, looking very excited. Let's go! Nie Tian said without hesitation. He let Jun Aoqing and Yang Qi enter. Then, he looked at Lai Yin Jiufeng and the others and blocked the corpse puppets' attacks for them. Lai Yin Jiufeng and the others moved and entered the spatial tunnel. Chapter 2398. Nie Tian and the others appeared once more. They had arrived in an unfamiliar world. This place seemed to be an underground world. The surroundings were very wide, and it looked like a giant palace. Nie Tian could sense that the darkness energy here was much thicker than in Soul Break Valley. What is this place? Yang Qi's eyes and voice trembled. Nie Tian, where the hell did you bring us to? Nangong Lin roared angrily and stared coldly at Nie Tian. Nie Tian, however, didn't pay any attention to him as he scanned his surroundings with his soul awareness. He didn't know where this place was either. If I'm not mistaken, this should be the Hand of Darkness's hideout, Lai Yin Jiufeng said. His voice was cold, and a strange smile hung on his face. Nie Tian paused for a moment, then turned to the little Fat Cat and asked, Little Fatty, is what he said true? Amen. Fat Cat nodded. The soul break energy here is very thick. It's very likely that this is the Hand of Darkness nest. Nie Tion's face stiffened. He didn't think that he would accidentally come to the Hand of Darkness nest. Fat, where is the Hand of Darkness hiding? Nie Tion asked excitedly. Fat Cat shook his head and smiled bitterly. Follow that kid with the veins of 3 lives. He'll lead you to the Hand of Darkness. Nie Tion looked at Lai Yin Jiufeng. He knew that the person Fat Cat was talking about was the latter. At this time, little Fat Cat's face was not looking too good. He was worried about something else, the Yuan restraining pill. Nie Tion had just consumed the Yuan restraining pill and suppressed his origin energy. But Fat Cat knew that Lai Yin Jiufeng's Yuan restraining pill was not as simple as it seemed. He didn't know what other effects the Yuan restraining pill had other than suppressing his origin energy. Next, he could only take it one step at a time. Let's go, Lai Yin Jiufeng. Take us to the Hand of Darkness. Nie Tion smiled at Lai Yin Jiufeng. The corner of Lai Yin Jiufeng's lips twitched, but he didn't say anything. Instead, he walked toward a deep cave. Nie Tion and the others followed closely behind Lai Yin Jiufeng. A moment later, everyone arrived outside the deep cave. What a powerful aura of darkness! June Ouching frowned as she stared at the cave in front of her. Nie Tion's eyes also narrowed. He also felt a strong dark aura. However, the heart of darkness in his body was very calm and showed no signs of restlessness. From the looks of it, Blazing Jiufeng's Yuan inhibiting pill was very useful. The Hand of Darkness is inside the cave. Let's go in, Lai Yin Jiufeng said indifferently and was the first to step into the cave. The cave was very wide. It was 1,000 meters wide and several thousand meters tall. It looked like the hallway of a giant palace. The moment they entered the cave, Nie Tion immediately felt a great pressure. He actually felt like he couldn't breathe properly. The others also felt this pressure and frowned. This was a pure darkness pressure. It was suffocating and terrifying. Fortunately, Nie Tion and the others were all very strong. Although they were under the pressure of the darkness, it wasn't fatal. Lord Nie Tion, what is this place? It's so eerie. Yang Qi looked around and felt a chill run down his spine. He couldn't help but ask. Nie Tion didn't answer. Instead, he smiled faintly and told Yang Qi to calm down. To be honest, he didn't know where this place was. QL11 however, Lai Yin Jiufeng was very calm. He looked like he was completely at ease. A moment later, they were about to reach the end of the cave. Nie Tion sensed that the dark aura in the air had grown even stronger. It was as if there was a dark abyss in front of them that was constantly releasing darkness energy. Who's there? Suddenly, a loud roar came from inside the cave. A black-robed figure appeared. Nie Tion and the others were stunned. They didn't think that someone would get here before them. Nie Tion couldn't help but frown as he looked at the black figure that suddenly appeared. This face seemed somewhat familiar. He had seen this person somewhere before. It's the people from the first main city. Yang Qi cried out in alarm. Nie Tion's eyes trembled as he remembered. He had seen this person before. This person was close to Li Juhan. This person had also appeared when Li Juhan wanted to attack Nie Tion. If it's someone from the first main city, then Li Juhan must be inside. Lai Yin Jiufeng smiled cold. He rushed in without hesitation. Stop him. Another voice came from inside the cave at almost the same time. It was Li Juhan. You're courting death. The black-robed man moved and slapped at Lai Yin Jiufeng. You're courting death. But you're the one who's courting death. Lai Yin Jiufeng smiled cold. He didn't show any mercy. He rushed forward like a ball of fire. Boom! The black-robed man didn't even have time to react. The fire swept past him and burned him to ashes. He was just an ordinary mid-stage paramount god. There was no way he was a match for Lai Yin Jiufeng. Lai Yin Jiufeng came to a stop outside a huge cave. He was stunned by what he saw inside the cave. Nie Tion saw Lai Yin Jiufeng's expression from afar. He didn't know what was going on. He moved to Li Yinjiufeng's side. When he looked into the cave, he was stunned as well. A dozen figures stood in the cave, guarding one person. That person was Li Juhan. Right now, Li Juhan was floating in the air. He was shrouded in a terrifying black vortex. The black vortex was surging madly and releasing a dark aura into the air. The Hand of Darkness. In the next moment, Nie Tian and Li Yinjiufeng came to their senses and exclaimed in unison. There was no doubt that the black vortex around Li Juhan was the Hand of Darkness. Nie Tian could even faintly sense that the black vortex was in the shape of a hand. It was like a clenched fist that was holding Li Juhan. "Don't let them get close to me." Li Juhan's voice rang out. His eyes were like a vicious wolf's, shining with an incomparably sinister light. If one looked closely, they would see that Li Juhan was using his eyes to absorb the power of the Hand of Darkness. "He's fusing with the Hand of Darkness," Nie Tian cried out in shock. No wonder the Hand of Darkness had suddenly gone berserk. It was because Li Juhan was fusing with the Hand of Darkness. Strangely, Li Juhan was fusing with the Hand of Darkness in a very special way. He was fusing the Hand of Darkness into his eyes. No! However, Li Yinjiufeng's voice rang before Nie Tian could finish his sentence. He said solemnly, "He's not merging with the Hand of Darkness." Chapter 2399. Awakening the Demon Eye of Supreme Killing? Nie Tian stared blankly at Li Yinjiufeng. He had thought that Li Juhan wanted to merge with the Hand of Darkness. He had not imagined that Li Juhan wanted to use the Hand of Darkness power to awaken the Demon Eye of Supreme Killing. However, he did not understand what the awakening of the Demon Eye of Supreme Killing meant. "Stop him. We'll all die if the 7-slaughtered Demon Eye is awakened." Li Yinjiufeng did not explain too much to Nie Tian. Instead, he shouted anxiously, "Do you think it's possible to stop me now?" Li Juhan's figure was shrouded by the Hand of Darkness. His eyes were filled with killing intent as he stared coldly at Nie Tian and the others. "I understand." At that moment, Little Fat Cat's voice rang out, shouting excitedly. Nie Tian was stunned. He did not know what Fat Cat understood. The reason why the Hand of Darkness became so violent is because it was affected by the ultimate killer magic eye. Little Fat Cat cried out. QL11 Nie Tian's expression froze. He was speechless. He could see that the Hand of Darkness violence was related to the Demon Eye of Supreme Killing. Was there a need for Fat Cat to be so excited about something so obvious? However, Nie Tian's expression changed in the next moment. He could not hide the fear on his face, because he suddenly remembered that Little Fat Cat had said that there were very few powers that could affect the power of origin. The fact that the Demon Eye of Supreme Killing could affect the Demon Eye of Supreme Killing meant that it was very powerful. Nie Tian, you must not let Li Juhan awaken the Demon Eye of Supreme Killing. Fat Cat cried out in panic. Nie Tian came to his senses and nodded. Then, he moved and released a violent sword intent. Starlight heavenly slashed out. At the same time, Li Yinjiufeng made his move. Boom! Boom! 2 huge attacks shot out at the same time. Like 2 wild dragons, they headed for Li Juhan. "EMO, stop them!" Li Juhan didn't panic when he saw this. Instead, he spoke indifferently. In the next moment, a silhouette suddenly appeared and struck out with a palm. The palm force was boundless and boundless, like a landslide or tsunami, boundless and majestic. Bang! Bang! 2 muffled sounds rang out almost at the same time. The 2 attacks were blocked at the same time, and Nie Tian and Li Yinjiufeng were actually forced to retreat. How is this possible? Nie Tian and Li Yinjiufeng exclaimed in shock at the same time. Although they weren't strong enough to fight peak God realm experts, they were far stronger than ordinary peak paramount gods. Especially when the 2 of them joined forces, their strength was unimaginable. However, the person who suddenly appeared was able to easily block the 2 of them and even force them to retreat. It was simply too strange. Nye Tian looked at the man and felt very strange. The man's appearance was a little strange. He was very delicate and handsome, but unfortunately, he was only as tall as a 10-year-old. Moreover, his aura was very strange. He clearly wasn't very strong. He was only a late paramount god, but he was able to easily block the combined attacks of Nye Tian and Lai Yen Jiufeng. "Who are you?" Lai Yen Jiufeng asked coldly as he stared at the person in front of him. "Who are you?" "Emo," the man coldly replied and said his name. However, his eyes were as deep as water, and he radiated an extremely dangerous aura. "You're from the baleful frost-winged race." Lai Yen Jiufeng stared at Emo with narrowed eyes. There was undisguised fear in his eyes. The baleful frost race? Nye Tian was stunned. It was a completely foreign name to him. "I didn't think that there would be someone who knows about the baleful frost-winged race." The corner of Emo's mouth twitched. A smile appeared on his stiff face, but it looked very bitter. "Emo?" Yang Qi suddenly exclaimed. He finally remembered Emo's name. "You're the second strongest of the Dark Sea 9 demons, Winged Demon Emo. So there are people who know my name. And here I thought you only knew of winged demons." Emo smiled coldly. His gaze swept across Yang Qi, and the latter immediately felt a cold that seeped into his bones. Many people in the Dark Sea Black Prison were unfamiliar with the name Emo. However, everyone knew the name Winged Demon. Emo's name wasn't originally among the Dark Sea 9 demons. But one day, Emo appeared and defeated 8 of the 9 demons with his baleful frost wings. He became the second strongest of the 9 demons. From then on, the name Winged Demon spread throughout the entire Dark Sea Black Prison. He had the chance to challenge Li Juhan of the 9 demons, but he didn't do so. Instead, he joined the first major city and became Li Juhan's personal guard. There was a rumor in the Dark Sea Black Prison that Emo was stronger than Li Juhan. No one knew why Emo didn't challenge Li Juhan, but joined the first major city and became one of his guards. But even so, the name Winged Demon was still very famous in the Dark Sea Black Prison. "Emo, don't waste time talking to them. Kill them." Li Juhan growled and ordered Emo to kill Nye Tian and Lai Yen Jiufeng. Emo frowned slightly. Then, his eyes turned as cold as ice. At this time, the dozens of hunters behind Emo moved at the same time. They attacked Nye Tian and Lai Yen Jiufeng at the same time. "You think you can do it?" Lai Yen Jiufeng roared angrily. The power of golden flames surged from his body, and the space around him became scorching hot. It was like a furnace. Boom! In the next moment, Lai Yen Jiufeng's body shook. Flames soared into the sky like a raging wave. It blocked the dozens of attacks and forced the dozens of hunters back. Upon seeing this, Nye Tian seized the opportunity and slashed out with his sword. His sword directly transformed into dozens of sword shadows that attacked the dozens of hunters with murderous intent. Bang! 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 Then, there were countless muffled sounds. Then, there was a wave of wailing and screaming. The dozens of hunters couldn't withstand a single blow. They couldn't stop Nye Tian and Lai Yen Jiufeng at all. "Emo, what are you waiting for? Quickly kill them." Li Juhan couldn't help but become nervous as he saw this scene. "So," he shouted in a stern voice. He was absorbing the power of the Hand of Darkness and was at a crucial stage of opening the demon eye of extreme slaughter. He couldn't be disturbed. "Li Juhan, don't forget what you said." Emo's brows furrowed as he let out a cold roar. Then, a cold light shot out from his eyes. At that moment, Nye Tian sensed that Emo's aura had changed. It was as if he had suddenly become an ice cave, exuding an extremely frigid aura. Boom! Boom! In the next moment, Emo's body shook. A pair of black wings appeared on his back. They were 100 meters long when spread. The pair of wings was very strange. They seemed to be formed from some kind of terrifying black cold energy. After trembling slightly, the coldness in the air doubled. Chapter 2400. Demonic Wings of Frost. It really is the demonic wings of frost. Almost at the same time as Nine Blazes Edge's voice rang out, little Fat Cat's cry of shock rang out. Fat Cat's expression was horrified, and there was a trace of panic in his voice. He didn't expect to meet a member of the fiendish demon-winged clan here. He also didn't expect that this member of the fiendish demon-winged clan would grow fiendish demon wings. Fiendish demon wings? Nyetian was stunned for a moment. Looking at the black wings behind Emo, he felt the fiendish demon chi from the wings. His heart couldn't help but tighten. The fiendish demon wings' cold chi was too terrifying. It made him feel a bone-piercing cold. Even the yuan meridians in his body were slightly suppressed, and their circulation was hindered. Since the fiendish demon wings could make Fat Cat and fiendish demon wings so terrified, there must be something terrifying about it. Emo's gaze swept across Nyetian and fiendish demon-winged clan. The corners of his mouth twitched as he spoke coldly. "Do you feel fear?" Then, without any hesitation, the fiendish demon wings on his back suddenly shook. His figure moved instantly, like a black lightning bolt, attacking Nyetian and fiendish demon-winged clan. Nyetian and fiendish demon-winged clan both reacted very quickly. But everything happened in the blink of an eye. Poof! Poof! Before the two of them could resist, two sounds of flesh being cut rang out. Nyetian and fiendish demon-winged clan both retreated at the same time. When they stood still again, they found that there was a glaring wound on their chest. Blood gushed out like a fountain, instantly dyeing their bodies red. At this time, Nyetian and fiendish demon-winged clan, one of them maintained his sword stance, while the other raised his arm and didn't attack. So fast. Fiendish demon-winged clan's eyes suddenly focused. His voice was trembling and his teeth were chattering. Emo's speed was too fast, to the point that it was shocking. Nyetian frowned and immediately calmed down. He saw that Emo's fiendish frost wings were still dripping with blood, which was caused by the wounds on his and Blazing Nine-Edge's chests. The thing that hurt us was the fiendish frost wings on his back. Nyetian's heart trembled as he said in a low voice. He was shocked because Emo's speed was way beyond his expectation. In terms of pure speed, among all the people Nyetian had met, only the peerless genius of the Gale clan, Gale Xiaoxiao, could compete with Emo. Of course, a freak like Jun Ouching who could travel through space and time at will did not count. "How dare you hurt His Highness the Crown Prince? You're courting death." Just then, a furious roar rang out from the side. A figure rushed over with terrifying purple lightning surging around him. The person who suddenly attacked was none other than Nangong Lin. At this moment, Nangong Lin released all of the purple thunder 9 roars in his body in order to perform exceptionally well before the raging flames 9 edges. Outside his body, 9 bolts of purple lightning were rolling like 9 long purple snakes. Facing Nangong Lin's fatal attack, Emo did not care at all. He did not even have the interest to look at Nangong Lin. The wings on his back shook directly, and then a gust of fiendish frost chi gushed out. The next moment, an extremely strange scene happened. Boom! Crack! The moment the fiendish frost chi and the purple thunder 9 edges collided, there was a roar, followed by the crisp sound of ice being formed. After the fiendish frost chi passed by, the 9 bolts of purple lightning were directly frozen. The sudden scene made Yang Qi and the others gasp. They were so shocked that they could not speak. Nyetian and Blazing Nine-Edge were even more frightened when they saw this. They gasped in their hearts. Nangong Lin was a martial artist who had merged with the Thunder Origin. The purple lightning he released was formed by the Thunder Origin's 9 roars of purple thunder. Emo's fiendish frost chi could directly freeze the 9 roars of purple thunder. This was simply too terrifying. The scene at this time was very strange. The purple lightning around Nangong Lin was frozen, and his whole body was frozen in the space. He could not move at all. Emo's fiendish frost chi was so terrifying that it could freeze the 9 roars of purple thunder in an instant. Go to hell. Immediately, Emo curled up the corners of his mouth and said coldly. The wings on his back released a gust of fiendish frost chi again, which directly shrouded Nangong Lin. This gust of fiendish frost chi was extremely fierce. It was even more terrifying than the sword essence of the blade. It was like a sharp blade directly cutting down. There was no doubt that if the fiendish frost chi fell, Nangong Lin would be directly cut in half. In an instant, Nangong Lin felt the most vivid sense of death. His eyes kept rolling and the blood in his body flowed backward, but he could not even sweat. He did not have the strength to fight back at all. He was like a fish on the chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. Danger! At this time, a clear voice sounded, and then a gust of sword essence appeared. Buzz! Boom! The moment the sword shadow fell, the frozen space around Nangong Lin was impacted and shattered. At the same time, Nangong Lin's body was forcibly pushed back a few meters. The next moment, the fiendish frost chi fell on Nangong Lin's cheek. Nangong Lin felt a gust of frost chi sweep past him. Half of his face was directly frozen, and he could not feel it at all. He subconsciously touched his frozen face. Half of his face was like an ice cube, and it fell to the ground and shattered like a piece of ice. Half of Nangong Lin's face fell directly. My face. Nangong Lin was stunned. He immediately reacted and shouted in horror. He was a late Paramount God martial artist, and his body had integrated the 9 roars of purple thunder. His martial body was far stronger than that of martial artists of the same level. His blood chi was so strong, but when the fiendish frost chi brushed past him, he was directly frozen. QL11 This showed how terrifying the fiendish frost chi was. Space-time swordsman? On the other side, Emo suddenly raised his head. He looked at the person who had attacked him and frowned slightly. He obviously did not expect to encounter a space-time swordsman. The person who had saved Nangong Lin at the critical moment was none other than Jun Aoqing. Fortunately, Jun Aoqing had acted in time. If she had been a little slower, Nangong Lin would have been turned into a piece of ice and shattered when he fell to the ground. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. Nie Tian and Blazing 9 Blades turned around and saw this scene. They were stunned for a moment. One sword, flowing shadow. At this moment, Jun Aoqing said coldly. Her figure flickered, and she left a shadow in the air. Aoqing, be careful. Nie Tian's eyes suddenly trembled as he shouted. Jun Aoqing had made her move, but Nie Tian had an ominous premonition. He wanted to stop her, but it was too late. Space-time swordsman is nothing in front of me. At the same time, Emo sneered. The wings on his back suddenly expanded, and they instantly doubled in size. Crack, crack, crack. In the next moment, the space around him was directly frozen. Jun Aoqing's figure appeared again, but before she could make a move, she felt the fiendish frost chi in the void. The space suddenly stagnated, and her figure also stopped moving.